An elderly woman lies frail in her ornate bed, a heavy cough sounding as she struggles. A small girl with reddish-brown hair enters, a soft place sounding as she sets a lamp down. The old woman sighs, squinting at the sudden brightness as she blinks her weary eyes open. Darkness recedes from the room while the young girl settles into a large, patterned chair beside the bed. She explains her thoughtful gesture, knowing the elder's deep-seated aversion to the cold, encroaching darkness. The girl bluntly asks about the woman's impending death, receiving a calm, chuckling reminder that all life ends. A frown marring her face, the girl reflects on her true nature and a past she can barely explain. She recalls her origin as the very first human, appearing as a celestial silhouette amidst a field of flowers. In her original form, the purple-haired beauty was adored by many, basking in the light of universal praise. She admits to hoarding the love she received, locking the precious emotions away inside a grand treasure chest. That hoarded affection eventually overflowed, driving people to violent wars just to claim her for their own. Her selfishness drew the attention of God, who appeared as a blindingly bright figure amidst the lush greenery. A heavy, big sounding accompanies God seizing the treasure chest, ignoring her desperate cries of protest. An agonized arg escapes her as she begs the divine figure to return her precious hoard of love. Instead of mercy, God offers her a cryptic riddle as the only way to regain her lost treasure. Unbeknownst to her at the time, God cursed her with the heavy burden of endless, unwanted immortality. In the present, the girl gnaws on her thumb in frustration, a gnaw sounding as she curses God's cruelty. She laments a weary existence spent as beggars, nobles, and babies, desperately seeking an end to her living. She sighs, baffled that the dying woman can still find the strength to smile at her own end. Standing up abruptly, she wonders if the woman, famed for her wisdom, has finally lost her mental faculties. Her impatient nature flares as she demands the woman reveal the secret answers she seeks before time runs out. The elder blinks one last time, whispering that God has a specific plan for the girl's long journey. The peaceful silence falls over the chamber as the wise woman finally passes away amidst drifting petals. Left behind and no closer to her goal, the young girl stares in stunned, wide-eyed silence. A frustrated arg sounds as she screams into the void, terrified of being left alone once again. A sudden whoosh sounding signals her transition as her soul prepares to inhabit another recently vacated body. She floats in a shimmering, starry void, the familiar weight of reincarnation pulling at her ethereal form. The scene shifts to a grand manor where a pained groan signals her arrival in a new life. She tries to speak, but only a squeaky noise comes out, leaving her confused by her strange new voice. Two attentive maids are startled by her sudden cough as they rush toward the sound of their mistress. They fuss over her with joyful smiles, checking to see if the young princess is feeling unwell. A tiny, pale hand raises as one maid calls out in surprise, noticing her charge is finally awake. The girl realizes she has been reborn as a pink-haired princess, finding some relief in her high status. She gazes curiously at the world, deciding this comfortable life is the perfect opportunity to solve her riddle. A rhythmic rattle sounding fills the nursery as the maids try to entertain the bewildered, reincarnated child. A striking, white-haired man enters the frame, identified as the powerful and regal Jeff Heather Piccadilly. The maids bow respectfully to the emperor, while the baby stares up with wide purple eyes. Recognition strikes the child like a bolt of lightning, causing her to panic at his unexpected presence. Jeff's cold exterior melts into a warm, doting smile as he gazes down at his infant daughter. He lifts her high into the air, a happy carry sounding as he calls her his pretty Darjeeling. The emperor's affection is boundless as he coos over her, marveling at her adorable, tiny features. He notes their striking resemblance while the baby struggles, frustrated by her total lack of physical strength. A soft kiss sounds as Jeff plants one on her cheek, blissfully unaware of her inward annoyance. Years later, the elderly Ulrika Red Megan offers the girl a position as empress, receiving a firm refusal. The reddish-brown-haired girl tells Ulrika to stop being so persistent after dozens of prior rejections. Ulrika insists she is the only trustworthy choice, jokingly claiming they are both married to their country. Hearty laughter erupts from the elder, while the girl sighs at the relentless, earnest request for her service. Ulrika looks on with a knowing, hopeful smirk, wondering if the girl is finally ready to listen. With a bright, cheerful smile, the girl politely declines the offer yet again, remaining steadfast in her choice. The conversation turns to sweets, and the girl nods eagerly, choosing delicious desserts over the burden of power. A hand tightly grips a golden, ornate scepter against the backdrop of a serene garden and gazebo. Looking down from a balcony, the reddish-brown-haired girl gazes at a cheering crowd hailing their new empress. Sweating and nervous, the girl lamentingly admits that Ulrika forced her into the burden of the imperial throne. She recalls a past decree where Ulrika commanded her to inherit the crown once she reached adulthood. A vision of the former Empress Ulrika appears, her long silver hair flowing beneath a grand patterned cape. Ulrika is depicted with blood on her face, reflecting on a life spent in isolation without any companions. Despite pleas to marry and stop her wars, the childless empress dashed away from her overwhelming responsibilities. Following her reign, the few relatives who supported Ulrika were dismissed from their positions, leaving the lineage thin. A grand golden throne stands vacant, emphasizing that there was no heir left to take up the crown. The current empress growls in annoyance, realizing that the laughing Ulrika successfully trapped her with the imperial title. She waves to the crowd with a forced smile, secretly planning to be the empress only until she can escape. A hand writes in strange symbols as she hopes to use her power to find the answer to God's riddle. Her plans are crushed by massive stacks of paperwork, causing her to scream in frustration at her workload. External conflicts flare as neighboring countries argue about war, adding to the empress's mounting and exhausting duties. Rubbing her head in exhaustion, she suddenly notices a detail that causes her eyes to widen in surprise. Losing her patience, she slams the desk with a loud tang sounding, deciding to push the annoying work aside. With a heroic point and a check sounding, she resolves to abandon her desk and find her answers. A man in blue stares in disbelief as the empress joyfully celebrates her decision to ignore her duties. In the sky, a vision of the mischievous Ulrika gives a peace sign, questioning if the girl's choice is right. Time passes as the empress lies in her final bed, reflecting on a long life spent dedicated to her country. On her deathbed, she names the white-haired Duke Piccadilly as the new successor to her hard-won throne. Two maids look on with focused attention as the cycle of life and reincarnation begins anew for their mistress. Reborn as a pink-haired infant, the girl crawls across a rug as a crawl sounding fills the room. The baby looks on with a grumpy pout, recognizing her former successor, Jeff, as her new imperial father. She struggles to chew on a toy while the maids watch her clumsy attempts to climb the nursery railing. Frustrated by her weak infant body, she collapses onto the floor with a loud chelsuk sounding. Lying defeated on the carpet, the baby lets out a tired ugh as she contemplates her difficult new beginning. Her purple eyes focus intently, comparing her current lack of mobility to the power she once held as Empress. Jeff Heather Piccadilly beams with a doting, charming smile, completely infatuated with his new infant daughter. The baby stares flatly at the Emperor, wondering why he isn't busy with the work she once did. She thrashes on the rug in an annoyed tantrum, while the Emperor panics and rushes to her side. Jeff pulls the grumpy infant into a loving embrace, oblivious to the fact that she finds him incredibly annoying. The Emperor worries about his daughter being lonely, while the mentally insists she is perfectly fine alone. A maid announces the Marquis of Fleur's arrival as Jeff carries the baby through the palace library. Abigail Martha Fleur arrives with 3 children, presenting them as companions for the young and confused princess. A cheerful blonde girl in a blue dress curtsies amidst a field of bright yellow flowers. The blonde child is identified as Renoe Marcia Fleur, looking up with large and innocent red eyes. The Emperor warmly welcomes the group, praising Renoe for her bravery, while the pink-haired baby watches with suspicion. The baby's expression turns grim as she associates a name with that of an ancient and terrifying devil. Carlisle Fasinelli Bergamot, a stoic boy with black hair, stands composed among a cluster of blue blossoms. The white-haired Barry Snill Fleur hides shyly until a maid encourages him to offer his greetings. Jeff smiles warmly, tasking the group of noble children with the important duty of caring for the princess. The pink-haired infant looks bewildered, questioning what her father truly expects her to do with these kids. From outside, the children are seen playing together on a rug in a sunlit room of the palace. The baby feels like an unpaid babysitter as she watches the older children play with simple building blocks. A sharp chalk sounding occurs when Barry accidentally topples the block tower with his wooden practice sword. As Ronaway begins to sob over the collapsed tower, the princess smiles and tells her not to cry. The baby's cheerful clapping calms the blonde girl, who tearfully thanks the princess for her kind support. Barry excitedly shows off his stuffed animals, while the black-haired Carlisle stands alone, staring thoughtfully out the window. Carlisle remains silent by the glass, his shimmering blue eyes suggesting a mind full of hidden, serious thoughts. Touching her chin thoughtfully, the princess observes the black-haired Carlisle, noting how quiet he seems compared to the others. As she plays alone with building blocks on the rug, she questions why she is even concerned about the boy's behavior. Nearby, the white-haired Barry and the blonde Renoe succumb to exhaustion, peacefully nodding off together on a plush blue sofa. Waving her small hand, the princess summons her companions, and they quickly respond to her call with eager curiosity. Seated before the trio, the princess holds a paper and purple marker, commanding her audience's full and undivided attention. She begins to draw a simple stick figure, spinning a tale about a mysterious person from a long-lost time. The children watch with rapt interest as the princess continues her artistic storytelling, working diligently to illustrate her grand narrative. Holding up her finished masterpiece, she explains the divine scene, depicting how God eventually departed from the mortal realm. She poses a challenge to the group, asking them to guess the answer to God's riddle while they stare back blankly. Swallowing nervously, she hopes these pure-hearted children might naturally possess the flawless answer she has sought for many lifetimes. With a sudden, energetic point, Ronaway claims she has solved the mystery, sparking a wave of excitement and curious anticipation. The scene shifts to a beautifully illustrated slice of strawberry cream cake, surrounded by lush green leaves and delicate flowers. A maid rolls in a tea cart filled with treats, announcing that snacks are ready, to the delight of everyone. While Ronaway and Barry cheer and jump for the delicious cake, the princess stands between them, looking utterly unamused. Releasing a weary sigh, she realized it was foolish to expect profound, divine answers from a group of hungry toddlers. Carlisle steps forward with a polite gesture, inviting the princess to join him for a slice of the strawberry cake. She accepts his hand with a soft agreement, deciding that a sweet treat is a welcome distraction from her frustrations. Later, the princess collapses face down on her bed with a heavy thud, feeling completely drained by the day's childish antics. Staring into the void, she laments that she is no closer to her answer and faces another long, weary life. She screams in mental agony as the constant shouting of her name and the children's demands drive her to madness. Seeing her mistress lying defeated on the bed, a concerned maid asks the young princess if she is feeling tired. A golden, gem-encrusted rattle fills the air with a rhythmic delong sounding, much to the princess's mounting and inward irritation. A sudden whick sounding occurs when she snatches the noisy toy from the startled maid, who can only offer a surprised exclamation. The princess gazes into the rattle's blue gem, her own grumpy reflection staring back with a look of pure disdain. Sinking onto her cushion, she decides that meditation is the only way to find her answers without any further distractions. She sits in a dark, brooding silence, her expression reflecting the immense weight of the centuries she has already lived. Her peaceful moment is shattered as Ronaway and the boys return, surrounding her with joyful smiles and a flurry of roses. The princess looks completely dead inside as the children continue to play and laugh around her, ignoring her desire for solitude. In the nursery, the others engage in a mock sword fight while the princess mentally begs for them to finally leave. A sudden slip of a hand causes the wooden practice sword to fly loose as someone lets out a panicked gasp. The heavy wooden toy spins uncontrollably through the air, heading straight toward the unsuspecting princess sitting quietly on the rug. A sharp whack sounding occurs when the sword strikes the princess on the head, leaving Carlisle frozen in absolute shock. Ronaway trembles in terror, clutching the weapon while lamenting her terrible crime, as Barry cries out in total and utter panic. The room descends into chaos as the children sob hysterically, even though the princess is the one who took the hit. Rubbing her head, the princess offers to tell them a funny story to stop their crying, baffled by their dramatic reactions. Ronaway instantly stops her tears, looking up with massive, sparkling red eyes and a desperate desire to hear the princess's tale. The four children gather closely on the carpet as the princess prepares to recount a legend from her own distant past. She describes a warrior queen who could fell 10 enemies with a single, graceful swing of her shining and powerful sword. Her story continues with a vision of the empress standing victorious over her cowering foes, ending every battle without a struggle. Gazing at her wooden horse, the princess recalls the cheers that greeted the empress whenever she returned home from a war. She imagines herself riding a magnificent steed onto the battlefield, her tiny hand gripping the mane of her simple wooden toy. A blush of pride colors her cheeks as she rocks on her horse, deeply moved by the bittersweet memories of past glory. She accelerates, reveling in the sudden sense of speed that reminds her of her days as a powerful and daring rider. Lost in her imagination, she feels as though she can hear the thundering hooves and the wind whipping past her face. Nearby, Jeff Heather Piccadilly watches his daughter with a wide, doting smile, encouraging her with silly and playful galloping sounds. The Emperor and his staff watch the princess enjoy her play, noting how her energy has returned since the morning's accident. Despite her mental pleas for them to stop their annoying clapping, the princess finds herself unable to slow her frantic rocking. A sudden creak sounding signals that the wooden base of the rocking horse is failing under the princess's relentless speed. The toy shatters with a loud quang sounding, sending the princess flying through the air, while her panicked father screams in terror. As she tumbles, a single hand raises to signal a halt, demanding a moment of silence in the wake of the accident. Emperor Jeff dismisses the concern for the fallen princess, claiming that all children grow up through tumbles. Jeff frantically rushes toward the falling infant, while the maid exclaims in shock at her own helplessness. The white-haired emperor catches his daughter, calling her dazzling as a glowing light surrounds her confused face. Jeff dotes on the infant with kisses, but she recoils in disgust at his overwhelming and truly affection. Staring intently at the emperor's face, a sudden realization strikes the pink-haired princess. She internally questions the dramatic change in the emperor's personality as a sudden whick sounding fills the room. Jeff is moved to tears by what he perceives as a warm look from his bewildered young daughter. While Jeff cuddles the infant, she internally begs for the other children to leave so she can play alone. A mental image depicts a younger, stoic Jeff, kneeling as he is formally knighted with a grand sword. The princess recalls a time when her father was known as a serious and deeply trustworthy duke. She questions what happened to the fierce and legendary general who once commanded the respect of every soldier. Jeff stands tall in ornate silver armor, his piercing blue gaze reflecting the power he held in his youth. Back in the nursery, a maid presents the princess's latest drawing to the smiling emperor. Though the drawing is just a messy circle, the maid praises the 3-year-old princess for her incredible intelligence. The infant gives a deadpan thumbs up, unimpressed by the adult's exaggerated pride in her simple colored pencil scribbles. She imagines herself as a grand professional artist with a red beret, while her staff cheers with excitement. Jeff suggests his daughter might become a great novelist, reflecting on the days when he frequently wrote himself. A side-by-side comparison highlights the transition from Jeff's stoic past to his doting, heart-forming present. The princess acknowledges Jeff's handsome appearance, but firmly reminds herself that she is still mentally much older. As the emperor continues to cuddle her, the grumpy infant wonders what has become of her royal dignity. The nursery doors swing open as an official arrives to deliver urgent news to the emperor. A messenger informs Jeff that a local lord has filed a massive appeal requiring his immediate and quick review. Jeff gently pats his daughter's head, promising to return to her after he finishes his imperial work. The princess watches from the floor as her father's heavy boots click away toward his official duties. Ronaway approaches the princess, who observes that her father is finally acting like a real emperor again. Feeling the weight of her tiny body's limitations, the princess rubs her eyes and prepares for a nap. A memory surfaces of a gray-haired child sitting alone in a dark alleyway, surrounded by shadowy townspeople. The poor child holds a small tin bucket, lamenting that begging for money is a total waste of time. The street child reacts in sudden surprise as their purple eyes widen at an unexpected visitor. A brown-haired boy smiles down at the beggar, comparing the act of living to an apple falling from a tree. Unimpressed by the boy's poetic words, the hungry street child can only focus on their empty stomach. The princess reflects on the boy's strange perspective, noting he was only 7 years old at the time. A bright red apple appears as she questions the normalcy of the boy's unusual and deep philosophy. In the quiet palace room, she admits that her subsequent lives have mirrored the child's ancient prophecy. Her focus returns to the present as her purple eyes sharpen with a sudden sense of awareness. Barry excitedly challenges the other children to a racing game, crawling across the carpet with high energy. The princess rubs her eyes in disbelief, wondering if her exhaustion is causing her to see strange visions. A red-haired warrior stands in somber reflection as the scene transitions toward a moment of deep introspection. The princess's mouth hangs open in shock as she witnesses a sudden and magical manifestation. A small hooded spirit appears before her, holding a purple emblem marked with a glowing golden star. Ronaway asks the princess if she would like to take the first turn in their new game. The princess declines the offer, encouraging the blonde girl to go ahead and play without her. With trembling hands, the princess clenches a white cloth containing the mysterious purple and gold crest. The palace room remains lively as the other children race across the rug, while the princess sits in silence. She internally questions the divine presence, wondering if God has finally come to grant her forgiveness. The hooded spirit informs her that she will not find peace until she discovers the ultimate answer. Sitting on the sofa with snacks, the princess asks the spirit why it stayed away for so many centuries. The mysterious messenger remains silent, its unmoving form offering no immediate response to her frustrated questioning. The spirit observes the lively room, noting that the princess's current life is filled with many interesting companions. Carlisle looks down at the younger children, reminding them that they shouldn't lie around on the palace floor. Sighing with exhaustion, the princess tells the spirit she has no intention of befriending the other noisy children. The hooded spirit questions her outlook, asking if this new life is worth looking forward to at last. A starry void fills the air as the spirit asks what expectations she holds for her current existence. In a memory, a blonde girl claps excitedly, marking a successful discovery, while the silent spirit watches closely. A past servant looks on with a nervous expression as the mysterious spirit hovers in the background nearby. A green-haired girl screams in frustration, the spirit's presence causing her a great deal of visible mental distress. Returning to the present, the pink-haired princess wonders if she has been completely abandoned by God himself. The spirit offers a cryptic answer, stating that she will only know the truth once she finds it. Eating a snack, the princess stares suspiciously at the spirit, while a munching sound fills the quiet room. The cookies break apart with a crunching bazak sounding, emphasizing her focused and rhythmic eating. The spirit warns her that failure to find the answer means she must live this way forever. Munching on her cookie, the princess seriously demands that the spirit provide her with a helpful clue. She notes that even the world's most intelligent people have failed to uncover the secret to her condition. The spirit declares her current methods useless, insisting she must achieve realization entirely on her own. A vision of a long-haired woman in a white gown represents the weight of the princess's eternal cycles. Surprised by the timing of this revelation, the princess questions why the spirit chose this moment to speak. The spirit mutters that it is likely impossible for any person to ever find the final answer anyway. Carlisle asks what she is saying as the spirit vanishes, leaving cookies floating midair with a swish. The spirit wishes the immortal luck before disappearing, causing the princess to let out a cry of shock. The other children look on in confusion as the princess shouts at the empty air on the couch. Ronaway and Barry ask for an explanation, bewildered by the princess's sudden outburst and strange behavior. Laughing nervously, the princess tries to play it off by claiming the cookies were just exceptionally delicious. Carlisle looks at the empty plate, guessing she was simply very hungry based on her frantic snacking. She lets out a heavy sigh, trying to process the spirit's discouraging words while calming her racing heart. Carlisle approaches and politely asks to sit beside her, holding out a small wooden box for the princess. The black-haired boy notes her downcast expression and asks if she has any deep concerns on her mind. He offers his full support, promising to help her think through any problems she might be facing. The princess stares at him, realizing Carlisle's serious and composed nature is strikingly similar to the old Jeff. She wonders if he always speaks with such careful maturity, finding his stoic personality quite interesting. Smiling warmly, she tells him it's okay and admits she was just admiring his sincere worry for her. Nearby, Ronaway insults Barry, calling him stone-headed as they begin another one of their typical arguments. A sharp whack sounding occurs as the blonde girl hits Barry, her anger boiling over during their play. The princess decides that her best course of action is simply to pretend she doesn't see their chaos. The children shout and chase each other around a golden chandelier, their energy filling the palace room. The princess tells Carlisle that the others simply wouldn't understand the gravity of her unique situation. Ronaway and Barry zoom in with massive, sparkling eyes, repeating her word with a look of extreme curiosity. They exclaim with excitement, thrilled by the realization that the young princess is actually worried about something. Striking a pose in matching detective outfits, they vow to solve the princess's problem with their investigative skills. Though she objects, they suggest looking in the study room, since their parents go there for answers. The children skip and dance down the hallway, singing a happy song about going to the study room. Clutching her forehead, the princess internally screams as her hopes for a quiet day are officially ruined. Ronaway and Barry grab the princess, dragging her along with them as they run through the corridors. Music notes swirl around the group as they head toward the library, ignoring the princess's mounting frustration. Carlisle realizes the library is further away than he thought, while the princess admits her physical limitations. The silver-haired boy and blonde girl pant heavily, realizing they cannot run all the way to their destination. Maids watch from the side, weeping with joy at the sight of the children playing together so harmoniously. A maid peeks from behind a wall, blushing with admiration at the princess's adorable and bossy nature. A maid offers to carry the princess to the library, but the independent child firmly rejects the offer. The maid smiles as the princess tries to take charge of the other children on the floor. The maids wait patiently in the hallway as the group of children finally enters the grand library. Barry and Roanoke stand in awe of the massive, book-filled library, marveling at its grand scale. Ronaway drags the princess along, who reflects that she already searched this library thoroughly in her past life. Letting out a weary sigh, the pink-haired princess decides to play briefly before returning to her room. A dark silhouette of a man stands on the upper balcony, overlooking the vast stacks of books. The children explore the lower floor, while shadows of busy scholars move among the many reading tables. Ronaway comes to a sudden halt, her attention captured by a framed artwork depicting a celestial battle. The stained glass painting portrays an angel with a spear pinning down a horned, dark figure amidst clouds. Rono's eyes sparkle with wide-eyed wonder as she gazes up at the vibrant and dramatic scene. Pointing at the frame, Ronaway excitedly identifies the devil while Barry looks on with curious interest. Barry argues that the angel is fighting a bad devil, sparking a debate between the two energetic children. Ronaway disagrees, pointing out that the angel is actually hitting the figure, questioning Barry's simple interpretation. The two begin shouting over each other, arguing whether the angel is scolding sinners or tormenting the devil. The princess watches the loud argument with total exhaustion, while Carlisle remains his usual stoic and calm self. Ronaway gets heated, insisting that a bad angel could behave the same way, defying Barry's heroic view. Citing a complex philosophical book, Ronaway slams her point home as multiple papers flutter onto the table. Ronaway calls Barry an idiot, questioning if he thinks he is smarter than the famous scholar she mentioned. The pink-haired princess is shocked, wondering how a child could possibly know a book that isn't for kids. Deeply hurt by the insult, Barry begins to cry, begging Ronaway not to call him a fool anymore. The princess tells them to stop fighting because their noisy bickering is becoming exceptionally annoying to her. Nearby library staff look on with concern as the princess maintains her grumpy and bossy demeanor. The princess gives a menacing, dark look toward an approaching man, asserting her dominance despite her tiny size. Terrified by the infant's intense and mature aura, the man quickly cowers and hurries away from the group. Carlisle takes charge, gently patting Barry and Ronaway's heads to encourage them to make peace with each other. Barry and Roanoke stand dejectedly under Carlisle's authoritative guidance, their previous fiery energy completely drained away. The two children apologize, admitting their behavior was foolish, while the princess watches from a distance. An overhead view shows the princess sitting at a large table, littered with old books and scrolls. The small princess struggles to climb onto a large green chair, her tiny legs kicking in the air. Resting her chin on the table, she admits that her current life feels different than she expected. Ronaway and Barry continue to move around restlessly, while Carlisle calmly searches the shelves for more books. Carlisle triumphantly pulls a hidden book from the wall, surprising the silver-haired boy with his quick discovery. He presents a pink book with a golden cover, revealing its mysterious title to the curious group. Barry and Ronaway's eyes widen in confusion as they stare at the strange book Carlisle has found. Carlisle reads the title aloud, which offers 101 ways to get a romantic confession. The princess reacts with utter shock, her purple eyes wide as she processes the inappropriate book choice. With a perfectly serious expression, Carlisle begins reading the adult romantic advice to the group of toddlers. He continues the reading with calm focus, unaware of how ridiculous the situation has become for the princess. Barry and Roanoke listen with intense curiosity, though the complex words are clearly far above their understanding. The pink-haired princess is horrified, her face flushing with embarrassment as she listens to the romantic guidance. Carlisle finishes the reading and shuts the pink book with a sharp thud sounding, concluding the lesson. The children admit they don't understand the book's meaning, finding the sophisticated instructions too hard to grasp. Ronaway suggests they should try kissing to understand the book, leaving Barry looking completely bewildered. Carlisle's face turns bright red in extreme embarrassment at the innocent but shocking suggestion from the blonde girl. He quickly admits he actually has no idea what he was talking about, feeling completely overwhelmed. The princess watches the chaos, noting that even a future general like Carlisle is still just a child. She watches them run in circles, questioning why they think the confusing book was a good word. Grinning with mischief, the princess decides to give the two energetic children a bad nickname for their behavior. She recalls her past as an emperor, where she was surrounded by immense wealth and a golden crown. Dark silhouettes of nobles haunt her memories, representing the constant interference she faced in her personal life. She reflects on how the nobles' greed for power led them to fool her with false displays of love. Shadows of people reach out in her mind, reinforcing the common thread of greed she experienced back then. The pink-haired princess looks remarkably determined as she firmly asserts that her heart belongs only to herself. A hand grips a dark bottle tightly against a red background while questioning. In a dimly lit tavern, a woman in a blue dress scolds a man as she reflects on changing her mind. Looking somber, the grown, pink-haired woman laments that her future will likely involve more endless battles over her hand in marriage. Back in the library, the tiny princess slumps onto the table, vowing to find an answer before her fate repeats. Carlyle gazes down at the princess with a gentle, patient smile as she rests her head upon the wooden surface. A peaceful silence settles over the room as the pink-haired child drifts into a deep and much-needed sleep. The princess continues her nap with a soft snoring sound, completely oblivious to the scholarly surroundings of the grand library. Surrounded by towering bookshelves, Carlyle quietly watches over the sleeping girl, while her light snoring echoes through the hall. Bold pink letters announce the title of the story against a clean white background, signaling a shift in the narrative. A magnificent white cathedral towers over a peaceful town, its spires reaching toward a clear blue sky filled with sparkles. While enjoying a snack, the auburn-haired woman asks for specific records about Ariel, making her attendant visibly nervous and hesitant. The attendant explains with a worried look that the records are based on a kingdom declaration from over 20 years ago. Her eyes narrow in sharp frustration as a loud thud sounding occurs, her irritation growing over the kingdom's strict and annoying rules. In a brief moment of levity, the auburn-haired woman asks if her request for the records was properly conveyed to others. She clasps her hands together and asks if the king was informed, while the attendant mentions a failed request for aid. White flowers frame the explanation that the temple remains an independent institution that has flatly refused to meet their demands. Above a view of classical temple architecture, the text warns that forcing entry could lead to a dangerous border blockade. The woman eats aggressively while a man with a mustache pours her tea, her mind fixed on establishing a new relationship. With a look of genuine concern, the attendant asks why Her Highness is so desperate to obtain that particular record. From a high angle, the group discusses the fragile trust they have managed to earn from Daishin within the palace walls. An ornate gold frame presents a mysterious message stating that every loss has an answer waiting to be found. The auburn-haired woman rests her head on her hand, noting the recent looting and the theft of the Temple of Ariel. As the attendant explains how trust was lost after the war, the woman simply chooses to ignore the discouraging words entirely. A sudden, sharp crack sounding rings out as she slams her fork into the plate, shattering it in a fit of anger. The attendant is horrified by the broken porcelain, while the woman stands up, still clutching the fork in her trembling hand. Annoyed, she suggests simply seizing what they need, but the attendant quickly objects to such a reckless and impulsive plan. She recalls a past where everyone claimed war was inevitable, leaving her feeling helpless and trapped by her royal duties. Memories of her shouting about war flash by as the attendant reflects on how many times she has stopped such outbursts. The attendant worries about how to prevent a conflict this time, as war seems to be the only available path forward. A dark silhouette of a ship appears, representing the foreign fishermen who are crossing borders and stealing their precious resources. The auburn-haired woman's small avatar appears, placing the blame squarely on the fishermen for the escalating tensions and death. Raising her hands, the attendant reminds the woman that she had already given orders to send a diplomatic envoy instead. Looking down at the shattered fragments of her plate, she decides that diplomacy is no longer the right way to go. With a determined expression, she declares that the temple belongs to their kingdom and they will take it back by force. A sharp snap sounding occurs as she realizes she has found a solution, eagerly accepting her own sudden and bold idea. Sitting regally behind her desk, the auburn-haired woman smirks with newfound confidence as lightning crackles and roses bloom around her. The attendant stands in total bewilderment, wondering exactly when she ever gave advice that would lead to an all-out war. Rising dramatically from her seat with her cape fluttering, she loudly commands that General Roy be summoned to her presence immediately. Distressed and weeping, the attendant desperately begs Her Highness to reconsider her aggressive plan before it is far too late. Outside the grand stone building, the attendant's frantic cry for the princess to stop echoes through the quiet garden air. The scene shifts to a chaotic battlefield where knights clash in a flurry of movement and a metallic clang sounding. A black flag bearing a golden lion crest ripples in the wind, symbolizing the power and reach of the kingdom. Ruined columns and crumbled stone archways stand silhouetted against a brilliant orange sky, marking the aftermath of a fierce battle. Now clad in silver armor, the auburn-haired woman sighs while noting they must search for the answer during the temple's restoration. Hearing a suspicious rustle sounding from the debris, she draws her sword and cautiously approaches the source of the noise. A white-haired child with bright blue eyes and a face smudged with dirt peeks out from the rebel, clutching a dagger. The armored woman freezes in surprise, her eyes widening as she discovers the young child hiding among the broken ruins. A metallic clink sounding occurs as she reaches for her weapon, her focus intensifying on the mysterious and bedraggled little stranger. Guards rush toward the woman as she stares at the child, the tension rising as they uncover more than they expected. The guards find the auburn-haired woman among the ruins, relieved she has finally arrived. The white-haired child escapes with a sudden thud sounding, leaving the woman impressed by their speed. She tasks her confused guards with searching for the records she needs among the rebel. Gesturing to the chaos, she points out the impossibility of finding the documents without their help. The guards let out a heavy sigh as they begin the tedious task of sorting through paper. Night falls over the military encampment, with watchtowers standing tall against a vast, starry sky. A map is marked with red crosses, signifying another failed search for the mysterious records. The auburn-haired woman stares at the map, feeling the weight of the endless, unsuccessful search. Clenching her fist, she wonders where the oracle's record could possibly be hidden in the world. Exhausted by the fruitless search, she leaves her tent to clear her head with some fresh air. A sudden shout to stop breaks the silence, catching her attention as she walks through the camp. A guard roughly holds the white-haired child, accusing them of trying to steal from the camp. The woman approaches the commotion, asking why the guards are being so loud with the young intruder. Despite the guards' protests, she tells them to let the boy keep the food he took. The guards present a massive, bulging sack, proving the child stole far more than just a snack. She stares in disbelief at the giant bag, wondering how the tiny boy managed it alone. Resting her chin on her hand, she observes the child thoughtfully, sensing something unusual about him. Looking directly at the white-haired boy, she asks him to reveal his name. The child looks up at her and simply states that his name is Jeff. She notices his small, worn hands, her eyes filled with curiosity about his true origin. She reflects that even dirty hands can be the hands of a person with great potential. Pointing at him, she declares she doesn't believe he's a commoner and demands his last name. Jeff remains silent, his blue eyes wide as he hesitates to reveal his full identity. Growing impatient, she commands the boy to answer her quickly as the guards look on. He finally speaks his full name, Jeff Heather Piccadilly, standing tall despite his ragged appearance. He repeats his name firmly, confirming his noble identity to the woman and the gathered guards. She acknowledges his skill at hiding his identity, finding his survival instincts to be truly brilliant. Standing by the campfire, Jeff reveals that his father perished during the ongoing war. A somber silence follows his confession as the weight of the war's tragedies settles over them. Impressed by his strength, she orders the guards to give him chores instead of punishing him. A sparkle appearing, Jeff diligently sweeps the floors, showing unexpected dedication to his new tasks. The boy eats with incredible speed, stunning other workers as he clears a massive stack of plates. Jeff watches from the shadows as a gray-haired knight instructs soldiers on the fundamentals of swordsmanship. He peeks out from behind a tent, mesmerized by the training he isn't supposed to see. A soldier catches him and gruffly orders him to stop eavesdropping and fetch some water. Shouts echo through the training grounds as soldiers practice, with Jeff watching intently from a distance. Jeff finds a simple wooden branch and grips it like a sword, testing his stance. He swings the branch with surprising force, a sharp swoosh sounding as he practices alone. His foot hits the ground with a solid thud, sounding as he completes a focused strike. His eyes narrow with intense concentration, reflecting a natural talent for the blade. He executes a perfect horizontal slash, the wooden stick cutting through the air with grace. The gray-haired knight stands behind him, having watched the young boy's impressive, self-taught form. Jeff jumps in surprise as the knight suddenly calls out his name, ending his secret practice. The knight presents a real wooden training sword, surprising Jeff with the unexpected gesture. With a wide grin, the knight asks the boy if he wishes to learn proper swordsmanship. Jeff looks up with unwavering resolve and gives a firm, clear yes to the offer. The knight laughs loudly and pats Jeff's back, praising the determination shining in his eyes. He instructs Jeff to report at 6 every morning, provided his regular chores are finished first. The sun rises over the snowy mountains, signaling the start of a new chapter for the boy. Jeff accidentally fumbles his training weapon with a clatter sounding, letting out a startled cry. The auburn-haired princess accepts young Jeff's apology as he bows, having finished their early training session. Young Jeff looks up with wide, blushing eyes, his breath hitching slightly in the presence of her grace. General Roy arrives during the princess's walk, greeting her while Jeff stands nearby clutching his training sword. General Roy orders Jeff to return and practice, prompting the boy to dash off with a quick patter sounding. Deep in the woods, young Jeff diligently practices his swings as the knight reflects on his early potential. Chibi General Roy expresses surprise at the boy's persistence, much to the auburn-haired princess's smug satisfaction. Time passes as the white-haired boy grows, his sword technique becoming sharp and powerful with every swing. Now a young man, Jeff accompanies the princess to a grand social event, standing tall as her guardian. Clad in silver armor, a mature Jeff stands beside the princess against the backdrop of a war-torn kingdom. A regal portrait of the adult Jeff Piccadilly showcases his stoic resolve, framed by golden ornaments and roses. Seated at her desk, the Queen commands Jeff Heather Piccadilly to investigate reports of a Northwest border revolt. Jeff acknowledges his mission with a firm yes, granted full authority to lead as many troops as necessary. The queen asks if Jeff is turning 20, but the attendant corrects her, noting he is already 23. A pleased chibi queen celebrates Jeff's growth while her weary attendant watches with a tired, knowing expression. Facing an endless mountain of paperwork, the queen wonders if her administrative duties will ever truly be finished. Her despair deepens as a fresh cart of heavy records arrives with a sudden, heavy trundle sounding. An attendant presents a new pile of scrolls, cheerfully requesting permission to build a temple in the south. The queen's face twists in pure horror at the realization that the royal work will never actually end. Overwhelmed by the constant demands, a frantic voice cries out, asking why everyone is seeking so much attention. The queen collapses onto her desk, literally buried beneath the weight of scrolls and unread reports. Sheets of paper flutter through the air, symbolizing the chaotic and suffocating nature of her royal responsibilities. Demands for war buffs and building permits flash before her eyes like a never-ending bureaucratic nightmare. Dizziness sets in as reports of rebellion and festival preparations clash within the queen's fraying mind. A desperate plea for help rings out from beneath the falling papers as the queen finally reaches her limit. Only a single hand remains visible as the queen is completely swallowed by a massive landslide of documents. The scene fades as her hand reaches upward, a final, silent signal of her defeat by the palace administration. A hand reaches out to touch a paper hat, shifting the scene back to a much simpler time. The pink-haired princess bolts awake with a shout, startled by the rowdy children playing around her table. She realizes her traumatic vision of the paperwork landslide was just a nightmare triggered by a paper boat. The children, including Jeff and a black-haired boy, dismiss her worries, insisting their paper supply is endless. The black-haired boy stares blankly while wearing a tower of paper boats on his head like a crown. The princess reflects on the black-haired boy's behavior, realizing that despite his mature appearance, he's just a child. With a tearful ta-la sounding, Jeff and the blonde girl excitedly present their latest paper creations to the princess. Jeff peeks over the table, his eyes shining with joy as he tries to share his work with her. He tearfully offers her a paper craft, but she bluntly rejects it, saying she has no use for it. The library is thrown into total chaos as the children scatter books and papers across the ornate floor. Frustrated, the pink-haired princess refuses to join the mess, even as the attendant begs her to participate. The three children look at her with heartbreakingly sad eyes, their disappointment filling the quiet library air. Jeff's jaw drops in disbelief at her cold refusal, his heart clearly crushed by the princess's harsh words. Tears well up in the young boy's eyes, his emotional devastation visible to everyone in the room. A paper boat is suddenly crushed with a sharp crinkle sounding, reflecting of the moment. The other children scold the princess, claiming it was rude to mention the wrecked ship she just made. The princess sulks with an annoyed expression, while the black-haired boy looks on with a confused, blank stare. The black-haired boy tries to smooth things over, admitting his parents always called him a naturally clumsy kid. The princess offers a small thanks, while Jeff zooms past in the background, having forgotten his earlier sadness. Suddenly bored, Jeff tosses his paper boat onto a stack of documents, declaring origami isn't fun anymore. Stomachs begin to growl, with a soft rumble sounding, as the children realize they are all becoming quite hungry. Driven by hunger, young Jeff begins to munch on a piece of paper with a soft chewing sounding. The black-haired boy rushes toward Jeff with a quick zip sounding, panicking as he tries to stop him.
He suggests they clean up the library mess immediately so they can go find something real to eat.
Jeff declares he is far too hungry to clean, while the pink-haired princess watches the messy library. Two maids arrive to guide the energetic children away from the scattered papers for a meal. As Jeff tidies the floor, the blonde girl excitedly shouts for meat to satisfy her growing hunger. Jeff urges the princess to eat first, but she insists they finish cleaning the library together. Jeff suddenly catches her hand with a sharp tap sounding, stopping her from touching the sharp paper edges. He warns her that handling the papers carelessly might result in a painful cut on her hand. The black-haired boy looks at her with a serious expression, deeply concerned for the young princess's safety. Startled by his intensity, the pink-haired princess quickly apologizes, while Jeff blushes and pulls his hand away. He places a heavy book onto a stack with a solid thud sounding, completing his task efficiently. The pink-haired princess praises Jeff's hard work, acknowledging his dedication to finishing the chores before lunch. She offers him a carefully folded paper boat, remembering how much he enjoyed this simple craft earlier. Jeff smiles warmly and thanks her, cherishing the small gift as he holds the origami in both hands. The children finally follow the maid out of the library, leaving the towering stacks of books behind. They pass through the grand, ornate doors as they head toward the dining hall with a soft click sounding. A black-gloved hand rests atop a stack of books, marking the end of the morning's study session. An exquisite feast is prepared, featuring succulent lamb, fresh salads, and piles of seasoned shrimp. The silver-haired king sits at the head of the table, pleased to see his daughter and her guest. The pink-haired princess begins eating her pasta, though she seems distracted by her father's watchful gaze. She carefully winds a forkful of noodles as a sudden, sharp exclamation of surprise escapes her lips. The king beams with pride, calling out to his princess while observing her every move at the table. He explains that he brought Sasha Dave Vladimir to assist the princess with her upcoming royal studies. Placing a hand over her heart, the red-haired Sasha politely introduces herself with a graceful, confident smile. The princess reluctantly agrees to the arrangement, though her spirit feels weary from the constant social demands. Her eyes narrow with a suspicious glance, wondering why her father is being so overly attentive today. Sasha eats her greens with refined elegance, maintaining perfect decorum as the princess watches her with curiosity. Internally, the princess reflects on how exhausted she feels from constantly managing the rowdy children around her. She pushes her food around, realizing there is much she must fix regarding her current royal lifestyle. The king leans forward and praises her for eating well, clearly delighted by her healthy appetite today. She finds his intense focus on her eating habits to be quite overwhelming and slightly strange. A glimmer appearing in his eyes, the king stares at her with an unsettling level of paternal affection. He jokes that she might starve if she doesn't finish, much to her annoyance as she continues eating. The princess stares at her plate, which is still filled with unwanted vegetables and several small potatoes. She lets out a pained groan, feeling physically ill at the thought of finishing the remaining food. Noticing her hesitation, the king assumes she simply dislikes potatoes and comments on her picky eating habits. He asks if she truly refuses to eat the vegetables, his voice tinged with a playful yet firm challenge. She wonders why Jeff enjoys potatoes so much when they seem so unappealing to her right now. A flashback reveals Chibi Jeff happily munching on potatoes, a habit he formed during the difficult war. The king warns her to finish her meal, or he will be forced to feed her himself. He attempts to shove a forkful of potato into her mouth, causing her to shake her head frantically. The king looks devastated and near tears when his daughter rejects his attempt to help her eat. Realizing she cannot win, she finally accepts the potato with a soft gulp sounding, much to his relief. She reflects on her traumatic past life as a witch, determined to avoid such a miserable fate again. Setting her fork down with a firm tap sounding, she declares she will eat and live independently. The king is struck by a metaphorical bolt of lightning, shocked by his daughter's sudden display of maturity. He stands abruptly, boisterously bragging to the attendants about how brilliant and independent his daughter has become. A sparkle appearing, he proudly displays a simple drawing she made, claiming it's proof of her genius. Sasha diplomatically agrees, noting that the princess has clearly inherited her father's legendary and sharp intelligence. An attendant interrupts to inform the king that it is time for him to depart for his duties. The king acknowledges the reminder, while Sasha remains seated, her hands folded neatly on the dining table. His sharp green eyes reflect a moment of deep, lingering thought before he prepares to leave the room. The king's resolute expression and sharp gaze emphasize his firm decision to not overlook the current situation. Sasha politely acknowledges the king's authority, bowing her head as she promises to remember his specific instructions. The king gives the pink-haired princess a loving kiss, leaving her looking quite unimpressed and slightly annoyed. The silver-haired king and another man depart the dining hall, leaving the young girls alone to their meal. Sasha watches the princess intently, causing the young girl to look back with a startled, wide-eyed expression. Sasha smiles warmly while mentioning an older sister, attempting to build a friendly connection with the skeptical princess. The two girls sit at the massive dining table while two maids stand by in the quiet background. The princess feels a chill down her spine, while Sasha looks on with an unnervingly pleasant, constant smile. A whimsical, devilish version of Sasha appears as the princess reflects on her suspicious behavior from her perspective. The princess bluntly questions Sasha's sudden friendliness, pointing out that they have never actually met before today. Sasha explains her presence by stating the king personally tasked her with caring for the young princess's welfare. The princess remains skeptical of Sasha's claims, doubting that her father would have ever said such specific things. The king's stern eyes and resolved expression convey his unwavering determination to see his secret plans through. Curiosity finally piqued, the princess asks Sasha if she is truly skilled when it comes to academic studies. The princess wonders about Sasha's odd, humble attitude and her offer to teach, despite her earlier informal tone. The princess continues to feel a strange, lingering sense of familiarity as she watches Sasha across the table. She reasons it's impossible to have met before, as Sasha is far too young for their pasts to overlap. The princess asks Sasha about her family background, curious about her lineage since her father only used her name. Sasha proudly describes the Vladimir family as a historic lineage of prominent individuals within the vast Golden Empire. She emphasizes their high intelligence and refined thinking, positioning her family among the elite, high society blue bloods. Internally, the princess questions Sasha's family history, wondering if there was ever a red-haired person among them. The princess asks what Sasha's specific role will be, and Sasha confirms they will likely be studying together. The princess suspects political motives behind her father's push for her to bond with these specific noble children. Wearied by royal expectations, the princess reflects on how she has already had quite enough of historical lessons. The princess puts on a pleasant, polite face despite her internal exhaustion from the day's constant social obligations. Sasha asks about the other children, curious about the personalities and behaviors of the young kids from Fleur. The princess introduces the rowdy trio of Carlisle, Runaway, and Varys, noting they often need rest after eating. The princess requests the maids to bring the other three children to the garden for some fresh air. Sasha enthusiastically agrees to move to the garden, clearly eager to meet the rest of the young children. Sasha looks on with a soft, content expression, her emerald eyes reflecting a calm and secret inner peace. The scene shifts to the magnificent palace gardens, featuring a pristine pond, manicured lawns, and vibrant purple flowers. Carlisle reads quietly in a gazebo, while Ronaway and Varys run excitedly toward the sunlit palace gardens. Varys shouts for the princess as Sasha and the pink-haired girl walk out to meet the energetic children. The kids gather around, Ronaway and Varys beaming with joy as they welcome the princess and Sasha. Sasha greets the other children with a polite smile, though the princess looks on with a neutral expression. The princess introduces her 3 friends from the Fleur family as they all exchange cheerful, friendly greetings. The children introduce themselves with Ronaway Marcia Fleur and Carlisle Fasinelli Vergamot, proudly sharing their full names. Sasha beams with joy as she introduces herself to the kids as their new study and learning companion. Varys excitedly explains that they were just playing hide-and-seek and invites the princess to join. The children eagerly ask the princess to participate in their game, their eyes sparkling with hopeful, bright anticipation. Ronaway asks if he has to be the tagger again, and Sasha graciously offers to take the role. The princess watches the children play, noting that the game of hide-and-seek has officially begun. The pink-haired princess stands confused, realizing she never actually agreed to join the children's energetic garden game. She carefully hides behind a lush green bush, trying to remain unseen during the intense game of tag. A small beads of sweat appearing, the princess focuses intently on her surroundings to avoid being caught. The princess and Carlisle hide together under the bright blue sky, their location hidden by the dense greenery. Carlisle asks if she is all right, and the princess admits to being a bit surprised by his sudden presence. He explains they are hiding together and doubts Sasha will venture this far into the palace garden. The princess looks a bit grumpy as Carlisle points out that she seems to be playing all the time. Carlisle calls out to the princess, and she looks back at him with wide, curious, and purple eyes. Carlisle leans in with a serious gaze, offering to teach the princess and take lessons alongside her. The pink-haired princess looks on in bewilderment, wondering why Carlisle is suddenly making such an unexpected proposal. A whimsical flashback of Ronaway and Varys suggests that Carlisle might actually enjoy the prospect of teaching younger children. Hiding behind the greenery, Carlisle waits for a response as the princess continues to process his sudden offer. Overwhelmed by the sweetness of the moment, the princess gives a bright, heartwarming smile framed by yellow blossoms. Startled by an exclamation of being caught, the princess remains frozen behind the lush garden bushes. Sasha laughs delightedly as she discovers the princess's hiding spot, letting out a relieved sigh sounding. Sasha calls for Varys to join them, while Ronaway and Varys look on with surprised, wide-eyed expressions. While the other children bicker, Sasha wonders about the whereabouts of the princess and Carlisle. From her hiding spot, the princess watches Sasha with a nervous sweat bead appearing, hoping to remain undetected. Sasha maintains a quiet, observant stance with a finger to her lips, her emerald eyes scanning the garden. She spots a suspicious pink bow peeking out from the shrubbery, indicated by a glowing pink arrow. The red-haired Sasha walks casually toward the rose-covered trellis as the children hide nearby. Fearing discovery, the princess covers her mouth and prays for Sasha to keep her distance. Tension rises as Sasha's legs appear directly behind the bush where the princess is hiding. Acting quickly, a firm hand grab sounding, emphasizes the princess's sudden decision to make a break for it. The princess takes Carlisle's hand and sprints away, leaving a shocked Sasha in their wake. Carlisle is baffled by the sudden flight, but the princess insists they cannot afford to be caught right now. Hand in hand, The two children dash across the manicured lawn toward the palace's distant structures. A close-up captures the princess's blue boot kicking up dust as she runs with all her might. Determined to escape the endless games, the princess resolves that she simply cannot keep playing with the other children. Suddenly, several maids disguised as bushes spring up, calling out to Her Highness in surprise. Ronaway and Varys stand together in the distance, looking utterly perplexed by the princess's frantic getaway. The chase continues as the princess and Carlisle blur past the garden scenery in their desperate escape. A maid shouts a frantic warning as the princess runs recklessly, fearing the young girl might take a tumble. Her boot catches on a stone with a sharp crack sounding, sending the princess off balance. The pair collapses onto the grass together with a heavy thud sounding during their failed escape. Clutching her scraped knee, the princess laments that the run was definitely not worth the resulting injury. Carlisle and the maids rush to the princess's side, their voices filled with worry as they check for injuries. Essien suddenly appears and scoops the princess into his arms, his face etched with genuine concern for her. The princess is confused by Essien's sudden arrival, wondering why he isn't by Jeff's side. The garden is filled with commotion as the maids, children, and Essien gather around the fallen princess. From the sidelines, Sasha watches the dramatic scene unfold with a stoic and unreadable expression. Sasha approaches with a polite smile, asking the princess if she has sustained any serious injuries from the fall. Looking up at Essien, the princess questions his presence and asks for the current location of her father. Essien avoids direct eye contact, looking slightly nervous as he prepares to explain the situation to the princess. A flashback reveals the king collapsing in a panic after his meeting, desperately calling out for his daughter. Realizing the king's overprotectiveness is the cause, the princess sighs and agrees to head back with Essien. The other children look on in disappointment as the princess's playtime is cut short by the arrival of the palace staff. The princess glances back at Carlisle, curious if he also suffered a fall during their chaotic run. Essien carries the princess while offering to have Carlisle's minor wounds treated by the royal doctors. The princess urges Carlisle to stay safe, reminding him of his important future role as one of her aides. Sasha gives a respectful greeting as the princess is carried away, her expression remaining calm and professional. Flowers bloom in the foreground as the princess declares it is time for her to return to her father. Sasha watches them depart, reflecting on how much attention the princess receives for even a minor mishap. Essien strides through the palace corridors with the princess, their footsteps echoing against the polished red carpets. The grand architecture and glittering chandeliers highlight the immense scale of the royal residence they are traversing. The princess's attention is suddenly caught by something on the wall, causing her to stop Essien immediately. She stares in disbelief at a grand portrait of a woman who looks exactly like her former self. Essien explains that the regal woman in the painting was actually the very last emperor of the land. Darjeeling remains calm while the white-haired emperor carries her, internally noting her own superior capabilities and knowledge. A sharp turn sounding follows as the emperor reaches for a door, discussing the pink-haired princess's future reign. The emperor stands regally in full ceremonial attire, his golden crown and jewels gleaming under the palace lights. A focused gaze reveals Darjeeling's purple eyes, showing a depth of determination that belies her young, 3-year-old appearance. A frantic dash sounding follows as the emperor sprints down the hall, desperately calling out for his dazzling daughter. Darjeeling looks visibly overwhelmed as a hand suddenly reaches toward her, catching her completely off guard in the corridor. A soft sniffle sounding follows as the emperor tearfully embraces Darjeeling, surrounded by a vibrant bloom of yellow flowers. Internally screaming for rescue, Darjeeling is smothered by the emperor's affection, while the brown-haired attendant watches on cheerfully. A sudden gasp sounding follows as the emperor notices a tiny bruise on Darjeeling's leg, reacting with extreme, exaggerated horror. A loud wail sounding follows as the emperor cries dramatically, convinced his daughter has suffered a life-threatening broken bone. A frantic rush sounding follows as the emperor carries Darjeeling toward the clinic, demanding a doctor attend her immediately. Darjeeling looks utterly bored by the chaos, finding her father's overprotective nature more of a distraction than a comfort. The emperor stares intensely while Darjeeling calmly explains she simply tripped and sustained a minor scratch on her leg. Dismissing her protests, the emperor insists on applying ointment immediately, refusing to take any risks with her health. A soft whimper sounding follows as the emperor dramatically worries, determined to treat the princess's minor injury with perfection. Looking up at the ornate palace chandelier, the emperor remarks on the princess's surprising strength despite her small size. Standing before a grand portrait, the emperor praises Darjeeling's future potential, while the brown-haired attendant listens with a smile. Darjeeling looks toward the emperor with a skeptical expression, silently questioning if he can ever be cured of his delusions. A quick nod sounding follows the emperor's decision to prioritize medical treatment over everything else for his precious daughter. A rhythmic step sounding follows as they walk away, the emperor still barking orders to bring the doctor back. The emperor carries the princess along a high balcony, accompanied by his loyal brown-haired attendant through the grand palace. A sharp pause sounding follows as they spot two figures approaching, leading to a sudden, tense encounter in the hallway. Darjeeling identifies the brown-haired man with the monocle as the Duke of Vladimir, standing beside the red-haired Lord Sasha. A formal bow sounding follows as the Duke of Vladimir greets the imperial family, preparing to depart for the south. Smiling politely, the Duke explains his return to his estate, while expressing his regret at leaving the beautiful palace. The Duke notes that Sasha has learned much from the princess, promising their continued and loyal service to her. A joyful sparkle sounding follows a happy moment as everyone smiles together, though Darjeeling remains quietly observant and suspicious. The Duke mentions a statue ordered by the Emperor will be ready soon, before bidding the imperial family a safe farewell. A sharp static sounding follows a dark clash of energy as the two men pass, leaving Darjeeling feeling deeply unsettled. A soft gasp sounding follows as Darjeeling covers her mouth, sensing a chilling, death-like aura emanating from the Duke. A rhythmic throb sounding follows as the Emperor notices her distress, asking if her leg injury has suddenly become painful. Watching the Duke and Sasha depart, Darjeeling wonders why the powerful nobleman possesses such a sinister and unsettling energy. The sun shines brightly over the soaring white towers of the imperial palace, casting a peaceful glow over the kingdom. Within the royal bedroom, a black-haired nurse carefully examines Darjeeling's leg, while the Emperor watches with bated breath. A soft touch sounding follows as the nurse gently handles the princess's foot, checking for any hidden signs of injury. Clasping his hands in prayer, the Emperor frantically asks for a diagnosis, terrified that his daughter has broken something. A bright smile sounding follows as Darjeeling reassures her father that the tiny scratch doesn't even hurt her anymore. Resting in her massive bed, Darjeeling complains internally about Jeff making such a ridiculous fuss over a simple bruise. A soft chuckle sounding follows as Darjeeling laughs, momentarily enjoying the Emperor's dramatic and goofy display of parental affection. The nurse informs the Emperor that the special ointment has been applied and the injury will vanish by tomorrow. A bright shimmer sounding follows as Darjeeling notices an ornate, glowing jar on the table, sensing its incredible market value. Framed by white flowers, the emperor gazes lovingly at his daughter, instructing the nurse to guard her with absolute vigilance. A quick bow sounding follows as the nurse accepts the emperor's command, promising to keep the princess perfectly safe. A deep hum sounding follows the revelation that the medicine used was dragon's breath, an extremely rare and legendary treasure. Holding up 3 fingers, the emperor explains that only 3 portions of this miraculous ointment still exist in the world. A loud "what" sounding follows Darjeeling's shock, horrified that her father used a priceless artifact to treat a mere bruise. A soft heart sounding follows as the emperor gestures with love, while Darjeeling internally scolds him for being so reckless. Looking across the room, Darjeeling concludes that the emperor is truly a crazy man for his absurdly over-the-top parenting. A sharp creak sounding follows as the heavy wooden door begins to open, signaling the arrival of an important visitor. A quick report sounding follows as an attendant informs the emperor that an alchemist named Milton is requesting an audience. The white-haired King Jeff instructs Essien to arrange a meeting with Milton in the office rather than their current location. King Jeff becomes visibly excited, declaring that he will head over to the office immediately to handle the matter. The pink-haired princess is perplexed, wondering why a wandering alchemist who belongs to no empire would be present. King Jeff explains that the alchemist is fulfilling a specific request, promising to provide the princess with details later. Before departing, King Jeff gives his daughter a playful kiss, lightheartedly telling her not to cry in his absence. Flailing her arms in a comedic tantrum, the princess vehemently denies that she has any intention of crying over him. Exhausted by the royal theatrics, the princess wonders how long she must endure the king's riddles and this new life. As King Jeff leaves, the princess watches him go, while the dark-haired maid acknowledges the departure of His Majesty. Pausing for a moment of self-reflection, the king looks down at his ornate, golden-patterned attire and describes it as dazzling. Surrounded by vibrant purple roses, King Jeff wears a warm and satisfied smile as he prepares for his meeting. The king blows a heart-filled kiss back to the princess, who remains unimpressed by her father's constant displays of affection. A maid stands in a quiet palace corridor as a sudden, firm tap sounding echoes against the heavy wooden doors. The story pauses briefly for a stylized title card featuring bold Korean text against a bright, splattered pink background. 2 maids attempt to entertain the princess, offering to dance with rattles or read her a classic royal fairy tale. The princess internally rejects their childish offers, her mind still focused on why Jeff brought an alchemist into the palace. Hearing about the azaleas in the central garden, the princess decides to investigate the office located right in front of it. The 2 maids exchange a worried, sweating glance, clearly taken aback by the princess's sudden desire to visit the garden. They shout in surprise, questioning why Her Highness would specifically want to go to the central garden of all places. Desperate to distract her, the maids lie about scary giant bees and frantically suggest playing with building blocks instead. The princess narrows her eyes suspiciously, realizing the maids are trying to keep her away from her past office. To keep the princess from leaving, the maids resort to silly antics, balancing rattles on their heads and making funny faces. Observing their nervous behavior, the princess decides to play along and pretend she doesn't notice their obvious attempts at distraction. She compromises by asking to be taken to a nice place where she can focus on drawing a new picture. A paintbrush is selected from a wooden holder with a quick clatter sounding as the narrator notes she is 3. In the sunlit greenhouse, the maids reflect on how 3 years have passed since the princess was a crawling infant. Framed by yellow sunflowers, the princess's attendants worry about the lack of war news and pray for her continued safety. The maids clasp their hands in a hopeful prayer, waiting for the day that the missing royal figures finally return. Dark, swirling patterns represent the lingering mystery of how the young princess was first brought into the royal palace. A dark flashback reveals a stormy night where a cloaked figure ran through a muddy, rain-drenched forest with great urgency. The flashback continues, showing the princess as a tiny, sickly infant suffering from a dangerously high fever on that night. Darkness falls over the memory as the attendants recall the doctor's grim warning to prepare for the absolute worst. King Jeff is shown in a state of sheer panic during the crisis, his face etched with terror for his daughter. Back in the present, the 3-year-old princess stands confidently in the garden, a picture of health and royal composure. A butterfly flutters nearby as the maids stand back, eagerly anticipating the reveal of the princess's latest artistic creation. A close-up captures a wet paintbrush moving across the canvas, with a soft, sliding swish sounding as green paint spreads. Her face smudged with colorful paint, the pink-haired princess stares at her work with an intense and determined violet gaze. With a triumphant shout, the princess announces she is finished and tosses her paintbrush aside with a quick flick. The canvas is revealed to contain a simplistic, crudely drawn yellow face smiling against a bright, multicolored rainbow background. Proudly holding up her creation, the paint-streaked princess challenges the maids to guess the true subject of her masterpiece. She points a finger upward with a mischievous grin, promising a reward for whoever can provide the correct answer. The maids struggle to identify the abstract drawing, guessing everything from a simple rock and flower to a tree spirit. One maid raises her hand excitedly, wondering if the drawing is actually the potato the princess ate earlier that morning. The princess clarifies that the drawing represents a person who pulls the strings, leaving the maids even more confused. A whimsical vision of a purple-haired girl and a cloaked figure appears as they both struggle to solve the riddle. One maid finally has a sudden realization, asking if the simplistic, smiling yellow face is actually a portrait of the princess. The pink-haired princess beams with absolute joy, confirming that the maid has correctly identified her self-portrait at last. Impressed by the correct guess, the princess grants the maid a compliment and promises not to draw her as a stick. A maid suddenly approaches the group, informing the princess that she has been ordered to the Oval Office immediately. The princess looks on with curiosity, wondering why she is being summoned to the office after such a long time. The dark-haired maid opens the grand gilded office doors and formally announces that the young princess has finally arrived. White-haired King Jeff joyfully welcomes his daughter into his office, much to the dark-haired maid's amusement. Jeff gives his daughter a hearty hug, though the pink-haired princess remains characteristically unimpressed by his affection. Jeff reveals he prepared a special surprise for the princess, sparking her curiosity about what it could be. He gestures broadly toward a gift resting on the sofa, bathed in a warm, shimmering glow of excitement. Jeff holds the princess close, warmly declaring that the unique present was created exclusively for his dazzling daughter. With sparkling eyes, Jeff encourages the princess to open the mysterious box and discover her new palace treasure. Jeff explains that the gift was crafted through alchemy by a talent he personally raised for this purpose. The princess lifts a round, white, duck-like doll from the box, staring at it with a bewildered expression. She is visibly puzzled, questioning why such advanced alchemy was used to create what looks like a toy. Jeff introduces the doll as a duckling friend meant to stay by her side every day from now on. Jeff's gaze becomes intensely focused as he emphasizes the importance of the gift he has provided for her. The princess mumbles a quiet question, wondering what kind of special ability a simple-looking doll could possibly possess. Surrounded by floating question marks, the princess remains skeptical that this is anything more than a common plaything. Jeff clasps his hands together, expressing his deep desire for the doll to always protect her when he cannot. He clarifies that the duckling is actually a self-defense tool designed to keep her safe from any harm. A swirling, celestial pattern reflects her inner thoughts about how her life is truly beginning to change again. Jeff presents a small pouch, explaining that sprinkling its powder and naming the doll will make her its master. He demonstrates the tricky alchemy procedure by sprinkling sparkling powder over the round, white duckling's head. The pink-haired princess decides to name her new companion Bobby, officially sealing their bond as master and doll. A brilliant, sacred circle of light appears behind Bobby, signifying the successful activation of the doll's hidden powers. A loud, startling quack sounding erupts from Bobby, leading the princess to wonder if it is just a noisy alarm. The princess clutches the white doll, examining its texture, while flowers bloom in the background of her discovery. She finds that Bobby feels incredibly soft and nice to the touch as she gently squeezes its plush body. Jeff asks if she enjoys her gift while she internally decides that Bobby would make a perfect pillow. Jeff leans in to share one more important detail that he neglected to mention during his initial explanation. He demonstrates that pressing the doll's tummy will cause a defensive beam of light to shoot toward any danger. The princess gives Bobby a squeeze, and a sudden, sharp boom sounding echoes as the doll's power is activated. A skeletal figure is comically zapped by a bolt of electricity from Bobby, much to the princess's impressed delight. Jeff sternly warns her that Bobby's power is no joke and should only be used during genuine emergencies. He smiles tenderly, admitting that even an alchemical doll cannot fully contain the depth of his fatherly sincerity. Jeff playfully suggests she can hear his sincerity anytime by pressing his cheek, an offer she immediately rejects. He gazes at her with overwhelming love, completely undeterred by her refusal to participate in his silly antics. Jeff asks if she has any words for him, hoping for a reciprocal display of affection from his daughter. The princess stares back blankly, completely lost on what she could possibly say to her father's dramatic behavior. Jeff laughs heartily, choosing to believe that she is simply too overwhelmed with joy to speak at the moment. The maid observes the awkward silence, internally questioning what is wrong with the king's constant over-the-top displays. Clutching her new self-defense doll, the princess reflects on how much easier her past life would have been. She pokes Bobby's soft face as her father watches on with a satisfied and gentle expression of pride. Jeff announces he must depart for his royal schedule, happy that he found the time to deliver her gift. He turns to his aide and the maid, intending to reward them for their roles in the princess's day. The princess presents her colorful self-portrait drawing, surprising the maid with her sudden desire to give a return gift. Jeff is touched by the gesture, promising to hang the masterpiece in the drawing room for all to admire. Clutching the paper, Jeff asks with genuine shock and delight if she truly drew this portrait just for him. He declares with exaggerated excitement that the simplistic drawing will be designated as a national treasure of the empire. Jeff pulls her into a suffocatingly tight hug, crying tears of joy while the princess struggles to breathe. He promises a feast of her favorite dinners and endless treats as thanks for her thoughtful artistic gift. Jeff marches off with flaming determination, eager to finish his work so he can return to his beloved daughter. The princess lets out a tired sigh, her small mouth open in a yawn as her father finally leaves. Declaring her need for rest, she asks the maid to take her back to her bedroom after the exhausting visit. The princess collapses face first onto her bed, completely drained by her father's high energy and her new life. Squeezing the white doll, the princess wonders if she reflects on the constant danger of her imperial status and the lingering threat of assassination from her past. A memory flashes back to an assassin standing over a sleeping girl, their blade raised in the dark. A sharp, lethal swish sounding echoes as the assassin's blade cuts through the air toward the defenseless target. Feathers erupt into the air as the blade strikes the bed, leaving the masked assassin utterly bewildered by their failure. The princess reappears with glowing eyes, an agonizing "Arg!" sounding as she takes the fight back to her attacker. Back in her room, she resolves to use the alchemical doll for protection until she can survive as an adult. Exhaustion takes over as she collapses onto her bed with Bobby, questioning if her life will ever be peaceful. In the royal office, the brown-haired aide reminds King Jeff about dinner and the young princess's schedule. King Jeff instructs the aide to prepare his daughter's meal first, while the aide dutifully bows in understanding. The brown-haired aide marches through the ornate palace corridor, heading toward the princess's chambers to deliver the news. Outside her door, the aide informs the trembling maid of the king's summons, just as a sudden electrical surge crackles. A massive, booming, buzzing sounding resonates across the entire palace grounds as a mysterious power erupts from her room. Trembling with fear, the maid watches as the aide dashes toward the princess's door, shouting out for her safety. The aide stares at the grand doors in shock, desperately wondering what catastrophic event is taking place inside. A soft, rhythmic wafting sounding accompanies the thick clouds of smoke obscuring the aide's view as he enters. Coughing through the haze, the aide dashes across the room. To clear the aide dashes across the room to find the princess. A quick, heavy swing sounding follows as the aide flings open the windows to vent the suffocating room. He frantically flaps his cloak to clear the air, his mind racing with worry over what happened to her. Through the clearing dust, the pink-haired princess is seen coughing while clutching her new white duckling doll. A sharp "plaziste" sounding occurs as Bobby releases a defensive zap, causing someone to let out a pained cry. A sudden, sharp buzz sounding marks the moment a tiny mosquito is vaporized by Bobby's powerful alchemical beam. Panicking internally, the princess shouts for the doll to stop as it continues firing beams wildly across the room. The aide sprints toward the princess, relieved to see her sitting on her bed amidst the chaos and smoke. Sweat beads on her face as the princess awkwardly assures the frantic aide that she is perfectly fine. When the aide offers help, the princess flinches and insists it's unnecessary, hoping to hide the doll's overreaction. A bright flash sounding erupts as she realizes Bobby's power was triggered simply by a stray mosquito entering her room. The aide points to a charred spot on the rug, claiming it as proof of some dangerous accident. Squeezing the doll, the princess finds it ridiculous that such power was wasted on a common household pest. A soft whoosh sounding fills the room as she marvels at the sheer overkill power of her alchemical weapon. Feeling invincible, the princess slumped over with her doll, jokingly thinking she could even take on a deity now. The aide expresses his deep concern and promises to hire an exterminator so this disaster never happens again. He orders a knight to inform King Jeff about the accident, while the princess watches from her bed. She remembers how King Jeff has been inseparable since her birth, always there to comfort her cries. A playful "giddy up" sounding follows as Jeff abandons his duties just to let his daughter ride on his back. Thinking of her father's reaction, she imagines Jeff will start bawling his eyes out once he hears the news. A loud, frantic flap sounding echoes through the hallway as King Jeff rushes toward his daughter's room in panic. With a sudden push sounding, Jeff shoves past a guard, causing him to stagger backward from the king's urgency. He bursts through the door with a loud bang, screaming her name in a state of absolute fatherly terror. King Jeff's eyes dart around the room, searching for any sign of injury on his precious daughter. The princess notes his extreme patience, recalling how he never even got angry when she broke his favorite vase. Jeff pulls her into a tight, floral-framed embrace, his heart aching with worry over the report of an accident. A gentle squeeze sounding follows as he holds her hand, terrified that something terrible could have happened to her. Crying tears of relief, Jeff swears to eliminate every mosquito, while the princess calmly accepts his dramatic affection. A low, rumbling growl sounding interrupts the emotional moment as the princess's hunger finally makes itself known. Her stomach growls again, prompting Jeff to suggest a meal as the princess looks on with her usual composure. Jeff excitedly mentions a special meal prepared by the palace chef, hoping it will cheer her up. As they walk, a rhythmic step sounding marks their progress, while the princess silently prays they aren't eating potatoes. Jeff hints that today is a very special anniversary, piquing her curiosity as they head to the dining hall. Visions of sweet, strawberry-covered desserts fill her mind as she anticipates a celebration full of delicious treats. Anticipation fills the air as the pink-haired princess imagines the sweet aromas of a special celebratory feast. The palace chef bows respectfully, announcing the regional specialties prepared for King Jeff's private outdoor dinner. The princess's eyes widened with a delighted wow, sounding as she gazes upon the incredible spread of food. A lavish banquet of meats, cakes, and wine sits beneath a shimmering, magical sky filled with sparkling stardust. Jeff holds his daughter close, both of them silhouetted against the glowing evening garden as the celebration begins. Noticing the evening chill, Jeff instructs the maid to fetch a warm blanket for his precious daughter. A rhythmic nom sounding follows as the princess eats greedily, prompting Jeff to warn her about potential stomach aches. Jeff enthusiastically offers her a honey-coated potato, though she stares at it with a look of pure hesitation. A muffled quack sounding erupts as Bobby reaches for the food, but the princess reminds him he's just a doll. Bobby lets out a soft, sad quack, sounding, his large eyes welling with tears at being denied a snack. A pained arg sounding escapes the princess as Bobby's eyes glow with an overwhelming, alchemical display of dramatic sorrow. Relenting with a sigh, she offers the happy doll a potato, while a cheerful quack sounding fills the air. The princess laughs deviously, realizing she can finally dump all her unwanted potatoes onto her new alchemical companion. A sharp stab sounding echoes as the princess digs into her meal, enjoying the fine steak Jeff provided. Jeff rests his chin on his hand, admitting that watching his daughter eat makes him the happiest man alive. A satisfied sounding accompanies the princess's meal, while her father watches her with a warm, doting smile. Jeff mentions that her mother used to enjoy stargazing while eating steak, causing the princess to pause in thought. A soft drip sounding marks Jeff's tears as the princess wonders why he's bringing up her late mother now. Jeff drops a bombshell by revealing her mother is alive, his face damp with a persistent drip sounding of tears. The princess stares blankly, realizing that in 3 years, she has never once seen the Empress or her staff. She reflects on the oddity of the Empress living outside the palace and never visiting her only royal daughter. Lost in thought, she accidentally lets out a dribble sounding of sauce as she analyzes her mother's mysterious absence. Wiping the doll, she decides the Empress's whereabouts don't matter, since her current life is perfectly fine without her. The dinner concludes, leaving behind a table of half-finished tea and crumbs under the fading light of evening. Jeff stands up, noting the increasing chill as the princess reaches out to grab, sounding his hand for support. He pulls her into a cheerful hug, sounding, promising to read her a bedtime story, despite her grumbly expression. Jeff spares no expense, spending a fortune to install alchemical mosquito-killing machines across the entire empire for her safety. In his office, Jeff sternly orders his aide to expedite the installation process throughout every corner of his domain. Later, a soft quack sounding accompanies Bobby as he waddles onto the bed, presenting the princess with a bell. A squish sounding occurs as she pokes Bobby, thinking he'll make a perfect errand boy for her future schemes. She stares intently at the golden bell, realizing she has never actually had a reason to use it before. With a bright jingle sounding, the princess rings the bell and announces her sudden desire to go out and paint. The maid enters with a concerned look, asking the princess if a nightmare is the cause of her paleness. Giving Bobby a tight squish sounding, the princess internally vows to flee the palace if her life remains this dull. The maid reveals that Marchioness Fleur is visiting with toys, causing the princess to internally curse her bad luck. 3 noble children suddenly scurry, sounding into the room, shouting out to the princess with high-pitched, excited greetings. Forced into a social situation, the princess offers a hesitant greeting while wearing a stiff and awkward purple dress. A heavy flop sounding follows as the 4 children settle onto a grand white sofa to begin their playdate. Carlisle, the black-haired boy, expresses his relief that the princess is finally recovered from her recent bout of illness. He explains that the king's new machines have already begun to improve the health and comfort of the citizenry. The princess ignores the girls' shouting, wondering if her father's mosquito zapping machines are actually purifying the empire's water. The other children flail, sounding their arms, loudly complaining that the princess is being unfair by only acknowledging Carlisle. A rhythmic waddle sounding takes everyone by surprise as Bobby independently makes his way across the ornate carpet. A loud dud-dun sounding marks the white-haired boy's shock as he shouts that the white bread is actually moving. The brown-haired girl leans in with a wide-eyed wow sounding, curiously asking if she can bite the moving creature. A loud screech sounding occurs as the princess pulls Bobby's face, firmly explaining he is a gift, not food. With a sudden toss sounding, the brown-haired girl throws Bobby into the air, completely amazed by the living doll. The princess watches them, deciding to keep Bobby's laser-firing capabilities a secret to avoid a chaotic, destructive disaster. Loud woohoo and yeah sounding cheers erupt as the noble children play, leaving the princess exhausted on the sofa. Looking out over the bustling city, she wonders if something significant is currently unfolding beyond the high palace walls. The noble children are startled as the princess watches from the sofa, feeling out of place during the playdate. Looking away from the group, the pink-haired princess wonders what the source of the loud, distant commotion could be. Carlisle and the brown-haired girl rush to the window with excited cries of wow and curiosity about the noise outside. Flinging the doors open, the princess looks out over the sprawling city as a massive crowd gathers for an unannounced celebration. Standing on the balcony, the children watch the horizon, while the black-haired boy points toward a festival beginning in the distance. Surveying the bustling city, the princess grows suspicious, knowing that the royal family should have been informed of any festival. A white flag bearing a golden lion crest waves proudly in the wind, signaling the arrival of an important military force. A knight in ornate black and blue armor rides through the cheering crowds as confetti rains down on the parade. Dismounting amidst the celebration, the mysterious knight takes a humble knee, showing respect to the citizens and the crown. Silhouetted against the bright day, the massive crowd erupts in cheers, their fists raised high in triumph for the returning heroes. From high above, a column of knights is seen winding through the narrow city streets, surrounded by a sea of celebrating commoners. Sitting beside Jeff in the grand throne room, the princess realizes this isn't a banquet, but a far more serious event. Perched on her small throne, the princess clutches Bobby tightly, feeling the heavy atmosphere of the formal royal audience. The heavy doors swing open as the armored knight with the long blue plume enters the grand hall, drawing every gaze. A rhythmic clack sounding follows the knight's heavy, metal-clad boots as they stride purposefully across the ornate blue and red carpet. The knight's cape flutters behind them, their presence commanding and stoic as they approach the dais where the king waits. Stopping before King Jeff, the knight offers a crisp salute, signaling the completion of a long and arduous mission abroad. Wide-eyed and bewildered, the princess stares at the armored figure, her mind racing to understand the meaning of this unexpected return. The blue-plumed knight kneels solemnly before King Jeff, presenting themselves for reporting after years away on the distant battlefield. Glinting in the light, a magnificent golden vase is held aloft as a trophy or tribute from the successful military campaign. Jeff leans forward, expressing his desire to examine the golden artifact closely, while the knight acknowledges the royal request. Stepping down from his throne, King Jeff approaches the knight with an eager gait, ready to greet the returning general personally. The princess is overcome with confusion, her internal monologue shouting as she tries to decipher the strange, tense family reunion. Reaching the knight, Jeff wears a warm smile, expressing his absolute confidence that the general would return safely from the war. Jeff abruptly dismisses the court, announcing he has urgent private business with the general as the nobles begin to depart. Confused, the princess notes that the knights have returned from a war, despite there being no known territory left to conquer. Jeff pulls the knight into a sudden, joyful hug, welcoming them home with a warmth that completely ignores the formal setting. A loud "oof" sounding escapes the princess as she is trapped in the middle of the knight's enthusiastic and metallic embrace. Making a pained face, the princess feels like she's being crushed between Jeff's robes and the knight's cold, hard armor. Still clad in armor, the knight speaks of a mysterious power, while Jeff watches with a doting and happy expression. Gasping for air, the princess internally screams about nearly suffocating as her father remains oblivious to her physical plight. A metallic swing sounding occurs as the knight finally removes their helmet, revealing the face hidden behind the steel mask. Shaking out long, curly blonde hair, the knight smiles softly, the harshness of the battlefield vanishing in an instant of peace. The princess is stunned as Hecate is revealed, the legendary knight who has spent 3 years away on a mysterious crusade. A gentle pat sounding follows as Hecate's gloved hand rests on the princess's head, showing a soft, motherly affection for the girl. Hecate gazes down with a look of pure adoration, her eyes shining with tears as she finally sees her daughter up close. Memories of the past reveal that Hecate and Jeff once fought as fierce rivals, their history full of conflict and clashing swords. A celebratory ta-da sounding accompanies a vision of their past happiness, hinting at a deep bond formed through years of rivalry. Hecate explains that despite her duty to the country, leaving her newborn baby to go to war was her hardest choice. Looking at his wife, Jeff listens as Hecate expresses her profound guilt for never being able to hold her daughter's hand. Standing together, Jeff, Hecate, and the green-haired knight Rhys form a united front as the royal family is finally reunited. Hecate admits that thoughts of Jeff and their daughter, Dazzling, were the only things that kept her moving during the war. Visions of a brutal, bloody war flash through the air, contrasting sharply with the 3 years of peace the Empire enjoyed. Overwhelmed by the conflicting information, the princess closes her eyes, trying to make sense of her mother's sudden, dramatic return. The palace stands silent under a starry sky as the princess reflects on the possibility of a new history being written. Jeff thanks Hecate for her 3 years of sacrifice, acknowledging the torture of being away from home for so long. Looking into Hecate's eyes, Jeff smiles as she reveals that her faith in his return made the exhaustion bearable. The princess scowls, finding the dramatic and sentimental atmosphere between her long-lost mother and doting father completely unbearable. Turning to the green-haired knight, Jeff orders Rhys to continue her dedicated support for the Empress in the coming days. Watching the green-haired woman bow, the princess internally sneers, deciding that Rhys sounds exactly like the name of a snake. Standing stoically in her dark armor, the green-haired knight Rhys offers a subtle, knowing look. A looming blue snake coils behind Rhys, its yellow eyes mirroring the predator-like intensity in her own gaze. A mental dialogue expresses absolute shock that the green-haired woman is still alive after her mysterious disappearance. Holding her daughter, Hecate expresses her joy that the princess grew up healthy despite the long years of separation. The scene shifts to the grand palace interior, where a lone voice calls out to check for any nearby presence. Being carried by a male aide, the grumpy princess internally scoffs at the overly dramatic behavior of her parents. Wearing a look of pure defiance, the pink-haired princess declares her firm intention to walk on her own feet. The princess curtly rejects the maid's offer to read a fairy tale, preferring to escape the suffocating atmosphere. Clutching the white bird Poppy, the princess internally warns herself that people like Rhys never help without a motive. Jeff and Hecate share a doting moment in the background, while Rhys watches them with an unreadable expression. With a determined glint in her purple eye, the princess vows to uncover the true reason for Rhys's presence. Standing together in the throne room, the royal family and Rhys present a united front, while the princess watches closely. Surrounded by blooming roses, Rhys offers a playful wink, though her true intentions remain hidden behind her charming facade. Bathed in a spotlight of annoyance, the princess holds Poppy and internally screams her desire to avoid the truth. Walking through the opulent hallway, the maid suggests the princess attend a liberal arts class to alleviate her boredom. Looking down at Poppy, the princess decides that a class is better than rolling around her bed in frustration. Pink roses frame a window looking into the royal bedchamber, marking a brief moment of tranquility in the palace. A soft brush sounding occurs as a maid's hand carefully places a decorative floral bow onto the princess's hair. The maids excitedly explain that today's curriculum covers history and military subjects, believing the comfortable clothes are perfect. Wearing her new floral dress and bow, the princess confidently thinks that history and military tactics will be easy. Looking at her reflection, the princess decides that Poppy must accompany her to the classroom for his own protection. The princess calls out to the round white bird, ordering Poppy to follow her as she prepares for class. The maids readily agreed to the princess's request, confirming that everything in the palace moves according to her wishes. With a serious expression, the princess warns Poppy that he is strictly forbidden from shooting lasers at anyone today. The scene shifts to the massive white stone buildings of the Royal Academy under a bright, cloud-speckled sky. An elegant, gray-haired woman greets the princess, accompanied by a polite, red-haired boy standing by her side. The woman introduces herself as Baroness Alila Rune, revealing her former role as a highly respected academic assistant. The princess is stunned into silence, recognizing the famous Alila and wondering why the legendary woman hasn't retired yet. The red-haired boy offers a smile, explaining that he will be serving as the princess's dedicated teaching assistant. The princess narrows her eyes, scrutinizing the young assistant with a look of extreme skepticism and hidden judgment. Surrounded by red flowers, the red-haired boy stands politely, causing the princess to doubt his qualifications as a teacher. Staring at the boy's hand, the princess wonders if a child can truly teach her anything meaningful about the empire. Baroness Alila and the red-haired boy warmly invite the princess to take her seat to begin the day's lesson. A close-up reveals an open book resting on a wooden stand, ready for the princess to begin her studies. Alila looks toward the door as Jeff and Hecate peek inside, their presence clearly interrupting the formal classroom setting. The pink-haired princess looks back with a confused expression, wondering what her parents are doing at the classroom door. Peeking through the slightly open door, Jeff and Hecate watch their daughter with a mixture of respect and curiosity. Wearing proud and emotional smiles, the king and queen express their immense pride at seeing their daughter in class. The teacher firmly rejects their request to stay, insisting that the princess won't be able to concentrate with them watching. Alila asserts her authority, reminding the royals that she has the right and duty to teach the future emperor correctly. Against a backdrop of small white flowers, Alila politely but firmly orders the royal parents to follow her out. Looking completely defeated and dejected, Jeff and Hecate slump their shoulders as they are escorted away from an overhead view. The princess sits at her grand desk, while Alila prepares to teach the first history lesson. Holding a leather-bound book over a map, Alila announces they will begin with the founding history of the empire. The princess scowls at her textbook, internally complaining that the curriculum feels more like exaggerated folklore than actual history. The red-haired boy listens with a serene smile, seemingly finding the myths of the empire's foundation to be quite interesting. The princess looks over her desk with a questioning gaze, wondering if she's being treated like a child due to her age. Alila begins the lesson by describing a primordial world of nothingness before the arrival of the first human inhabitants. As the princess and assistant listen, Alila explains how the first humans planted seeds that eventually grew into massive forests. The red-haired boy maintains a focused and neutral expression as he observes the princess's reaction to the creation myth. Darjeeling remains unimpressed while hearing the legend of how the bravest became the leader. Milton reads a peculiar tale about a leader born from an egg who created humans from ribs. Darjeeling daydreams of tarts and jewels as the alchemist explains their ancient new human ancestry. A grand pop-up illustration of a sprawling white palace appears within the pages of the history book. Narrative text notes that the intelligent new human race eventually established a powerful, lasting empire. Lord Sasha listens with a smile, noting that these ancient tales vary greatly between different regions. Milton agrees with a nod, continuing his lecture while holding the ornate history book open. Lord Sasha observes that the story originates from a time long before mankind first appeared on Earth. A brilliant cosmic display illustrates the creation of the universe from a vast, flickering, dark space. Text explains that God created the universe along with a massive presence to manage and oversee it. White doves fly over a pristine river, symbolizing nature coming into being and filling the world. Silhouetted figures of men, women, and children stand together in a field as human society begins. Humans on Earth began forming into distinct groups, represented by a flag planted atop a hill. Loved by God, mankind developed endlessly, with leaders inheriting great prosperity for their many descendants. A massive, ethereal green presence looms over the palace, though its memory has faded over time. A lone figure stands beneath the towering, shadowy form of the great being that was eventually forgotten. Darjeeling stares with wide, thoughtful eyes as she processes the strange and ancient history of her world. A thick, red leather book with elaborate gold filigree holds the true stories added by every generation. Lord Sasha smiles warmly, noting that even new stories remain part of the world's grand, big picture. Milton laughs softly, admitting he has never heard this specific fairy tale-like version of the Empire's origin. A soft, disgruntled mumble sounding follows as Chibi Darjeeling sits in her large chair, looking quite bored. Milton turns toward a large map, shifting the lesson toward the actual recorded history of the Empire. Darjeeling keeps her eyes closed, internally noting that she was the one who actually established the Empire. After class, Lord Sasha and Darjeeling walk through the palace corridors while two maids follow them. Lord Sasha is visibly impressed, praising the young princess for answering the teacher's difficult questions so perfectly. A stunned expression crosses Lord Sasha's face when Darjeeling acts as if the knowledge is common sense. Darjeeling looks away, internally feeling guilty since she only knows history because she lived it before. They arrive at a sunny gazebo, where a black-haired boy and two girls are playing with flowers. The children stop their game to greet Princess Darjeeling and Lord Sasha in the garden. The brown-haired girl and white-haired girl excitedly ask Darjeeling what games they will be playing today. A black-haired attendant presents Darjeeling with two scrolls, announcing a game prepared by Her Majesty. A sharp thud sounding follows as the two wooden scrolls are presented for the children to see. The children gather around eagerly as the attendant explains this is a special game from the Empress. Two maids hold up a map of the garden maze, showing several red marks for the players. Excitement fills the air as the children realize they will be hunting for shiny, hidden treasures. The group stands at the edge of the garden, ready to begin the Empress's special treasure hunt. The white-haired boy and brown-haired girl run off with a cheer, eager to find the prize first. A quick dash sounding precedes their joyful shouts as the children race toward the hidden treasure. The black-haired boy watches Darjeeling while she stands composed, holding her own scroll in her hands. Lord Sasha asks if Darjeeling is excited, but the princess gives a very unenthusiastic, lukewarm response. A soft heart sounding follows as Lord Sasha smiles, watching the children begin their energetic garden game. The maids lead the small group toward the entrance of the massive, high-walled hedge maze. A close-up of the map reveals a special gift waiting at the very center of the maze. The maids explain that the most precious, one-of-a-kind treasure and a delicious treat await the winner. The vast green maze stretches out before the palace as the children prepare to go in one by one. Darjeeling enters the high hedges of the maze, followed closely by her round, white bird companion. The princess pauses within the winding green paths, looking around the towering walls of the royal maze. Distant voices of the other children echo through the garden, while Darjeeling grumbles about the game. The brown-haired girl's head pops up from behind a hedge, shouting for everyone to get ready. Playful shouts fill the maze as the children scramble through the hedges, getting their hair stuck. Dazzling scowls with annoyance, internally noting that having the maid Janet around would have made things far more hectic. Gripping a rolled parchment map, the princess observes that the garden maze has undergone significant changes since her last visit. As Dazzling navigates the hedges, a mysterious figure holds up a wooden arrow sign to guide her deeper into the labyrinth. Sitting alone with Poppy, the princess reflects on Hecate's return and the overwhelming emotional burden of her mother's past sacrifices. Her eyes widen in surprise as she spots a small red flag planted firmly at the base of a massive tree. From a high vantage point, Dazzling urgently orders Poppy to dig, while the round white bird responds with an enthusiastic quack. A startled exclamation follows as the princess's fingers brush against a small wooden treasure chest partially buried in the damp earth. Reaching into the open chest, Dazzling pulls out a simple pink stuffed doll that glows faintly under the garden's dappled sunlight. Holding the doll with a look of utter disappointment, the princess dismisses the supposedly special gift as being merely average. Patting Poppy's head, Dazzling bluntly declares that the raggedy pink doll is even uglier than her round, feathered companion. A look of sudden realization crosses her face as she begins to wonder if she has seen this peculiar doll before. Examining the toy closely, Dazzling remains puzzled by its familiarity, while the lush greenery of the maze looms behind her. Sunlight filters through the leaves as the princess recalls purchasing a similar doll for someone very important in her past. Clutching the doll tightly, Dazzling reflects on how a boy who once couldn't sleep without it has grown up alongside her. Both Dazzling and Poppy look around in confusion, startled by a sudden, mysterious presence that leaves them questioning what they heard. The princess clutches her floral dress, her hand trembling as a strange, overwhelming sensation begins to wash over her entire body. Seated on the grass, Dazzling is bathed in a shimmering blue light as a mysterious power finally reveals itself to her. A spectral voice echoes through the air, chillingly announcing that the princess has finally found one of the required answers. A tear escapes as a white-gloved hand reaches out to pat Dazzling's head with a tenderness that feels hauntingly familiar. Side-profiled and weeping, the princess feels a heavy sadness as a single tear rolls down her cheek in the quiet garden. Dazzling's purple eyes widen in shock as she realizes she is crying, the moisture clinging to her face in a rare moment of vulnerability. Staring at her own hand, the princess is baffled by her tears, wondering why she feels so much sudden, unexplainable grief. Memories of those who abandoned her flood back as Dazzling sobs, holding the pink doll close while her heart aches with loneliness. While the princess struggles to stop her tears, the red-haired assistant and a group of children approach her from behind the hedges. The red-haired boy offers a gentle, reassuring smile, telling the princess not to fret as she is clearly in distress. A group of young children gathers in the garden, their gazes fixed on the princess as she tries to compose herself. Two young girls look on with wide-eyed concern, pleading with the princess to stop crying as they watch her sorrowful display. Surrounded by her peers, the princess stubbornly wipes her face and loudly insists that she wasn't crying at all. Regaining her composure, Dazzling asks the red-haired boy if he managed to find the treasure he was searching for today. To her horror, the boy presents a handful of dirt containing a wriggling pink worm, asking if she would like it. Dazzling recoils with a look of pure disgust, shrilly demanding that the black-haired boy with striking blue eyes stands politely, holding a small wooden horse toy while awaiting the princess's reaction. Looking at the simple wooden horse, Dazzling is touched by the boy's gesture as he presents his version of a treasure. Standing among blooming blue roses, the black-haired boy shyly asks for permission to give the wooden horse toy to the princess. With a playful blush and a happy smile, Dazzling accepts the toy while imagining them playing together on a rocking horse. The princess watches from a distance as two maids escort the other children away, leaving her alone in the maze again. Closing her eyes with a weary sigh, Dazzling feels the weight of the day's events pressing down on her young shoulders. Turning back to the red-haired assistant, the princess questions why he hasn't left with the others yet. The red-haired boy explains that the empress likely made the doll herself, noting the immense effort hidden beneath its sloppy appearance. Looking off into the distance, the boy adds that the gift feels as though it was prepared specifically for the princess. Dazzling looks at him with a confused and suspicious expression, wondering what prompted such a sentimental observation from her assistant. The red-haired boy maintains a calm, knowing smile as he continues to observe the princess with an unreadable depth in his eyes. A dark thought surfaces as the boy's internal monologue reveals a tragic past desire to end his own life. Dazzling stares at the boy's back, completely bewildered by his cryptic and unsettling remarks about his past. A sudden whoosh sounding occurs as the wind kicks up leaves around Dazzling and the boy, heightening the tension between them. The green-haired knight Reese appears from the shadows of the trees, her presence immediately commanding the red-haired boy's full attention. Recognizing the newcomer, the red-haired boy offers a polite greeting to the knight, addressing her formally as Dame Lilith. Reese and the boy share a silent, intense look, their hidden connection creating a heavy atmosphere against the dark, speckled background. Bowing respectfully, the red-haired boy takes his leave, expressing that spending time with the princess was a true honor. A steady step sounding follows as the red-haired boy walks away, leaving the princess and the green-haired knight alone in the garden. Princess Dazzling reflects on having one less person to manage, while an off-screen voice expresses mild surprise. Lila asks the princess if she had been crying, prompting a flustered and loud denial from Dazzling. Smiling broadly, the green-haired teacher humors the princess's insistence that she definitely did not shed any tears. The scene shifts to the garden hedges as Lila questions the motivation behind the princess's recent actions. Dazzling listens as Lila points out that she had been glaring intensely at Duke Vladimir's young son. Lila warns that any misbehavior would embarrass Jeff and Hecate, urging the pink-haired princess to act appropriately. A loud quack sounding follows as Dazzling throws a tantrum, huff sounding while calling her parents idiots. Reminding her of the schedule, Lila prepares for the next lesson, while the princess wonders how she knows. With a playful wink, Lila announces she will be personally instructing the princess in military history from now. Struck by sudden shock, Dazzling stares blankly as a tiny white bird lets out a surprised quack sounding. Dazzling finds it hard to believe her teacher is so young, while Lila politely concludes the first session. The curriculum focuses on military theory to pass the time, as the princess is still only 3 years old. Dazzling boils with rage, imagining a pot steaming on her head while plotting to dock her teacher's pay. Assuming the princess is already knowledgeable, Lila decides to transition into a lecture regarding the empire's different factions. Using various family crests, Lila explains the massive political power held by the Vladimir and Bergamot noble families. Lila notes the Bergamots lack aristocratic support due to their ancestry ruling a kingdom near the border. Dazzling realizes that Carlisle is of royal descent, hailing from a kingdom she once conquered in the past. The princess questions why a duke's son is living with the Fleurs while observing Carlisle and his peers. Lila explains that the Bergamot family struggled to find allies, unlike the influential and well-supported Vladimir family. Under a vast, starry night sky, the palace stands silent as the narrative shifts into a dark memory. Inside a darkened nursery, a black-haired baby cries out with a series of loud wah sounding distress. A steady step sounding follows as a blonde knight in blue armor walks past the wailing infant. Elila insists they must leave immediately, but the blonde knight refuses to abandon the helpless, crying baby. After a quick glance, the blonde knight orders a subordinate to have the childless Marchianus Fleur raise him. Elila explains that the Empress pitied the baby, who was the sole survivor of a brutal family attack. She ordered the Fleur family to manage the Bergamot estate until the young Lord Carlisle reached adulthood. A playful whack sounding accompanies Elila's explanation that Carlisle's relatives were either killed or exiled to islands. Elila observes that the Bergamot family is essentially extinct, existing now as a noble house in name only. Dazzling deduces the imperial family used their most trusted servant to keep the dying Bergamot household alive. A rhythmic clap sounding fills the air as Elila praises the princess's intellect, much to Dazzling's annoyance. Examining a map, the princess reflects on the surprisingly complex reasons for Carlisle's presence within the Fleur household. Dazzling reacts with a look of pure disgust as Elila continues to heap overly dramatic praise upon her. Elila reveals that there is an interesting figure who hates the princess, immediately piquing Dazzling's suspicious interest. Ascended and incredulous, the pink-haired princess demands to know who would dare to hate someone as perfect as her. Claiming the status of an old friend, Elila asks the princess to lean in so she can whisper. Dazzling leans forward, growing impatient as she wonders why Elila is taking so long to reveal the name. A shimmering, ethereal figure stands in the center of a vast galaxy, surrounded by glowing stars and planets. Dazzling is stunned as she reveals she was the very first human being ever created by the gods. Elila mocks the princess's lack of caution, warning her that she doesn't realize how dangerous the situation is. The princess argues that since she already recognized Elila, there is no longer any point in hiding things. Elila questions how Dazzling identified her, considering her new appearance and the likely loss of her former powers. A close-up of Dazzling's sparkling purple eyes serves as the answer to how she recognized her old acquaintance. A quick whip sounding occurs as the princess gestures, preparing to explain the connection between their pasts. Dazzling points out that Elila has kept the same face and name for centuries, making her easily recognizable. A red-haired girl listens as Elila describes a giant being from the founding story that became a forgotten memory. Ethereal figures surrounded by hearts represent the second species of humans who loved the first being created. Dazzling wonders if one of those ancient figures could have been the giant being from the Empire's creation myth. Dismissing the thought as stupid, Dazzling reflects on her countless lives and the fact that no one ever stopped her. With an angry arg sounding, the princess insists she is perfect and that anyone hating her makes no sense. Elila giggles, finding it amusing that the princess is so shocked to learn of another being's existence. Library chairs sit empty as a voice announces the end of class, only to be met with an immediate, startled protest. Heavy metallic clang soundings echo across the training grounds, where armored silhouettes spar with focused intensity under the afternoon sun. Dame Lilith and a maid escort the princess to the arena, where another sharp clang sounding marks a fierce clash. A tired Hecate lets out a weary sounding, wiping sweat from her brow after finishing her rigorous sword practice session. Spotting her daughter, Hecate waves her hand with pure delight and calls out to Darjeeling with an excited, bright smile. Hecate laughs joyfully while pulling the princess into a tight embrace, though Darjeeling remains bored by the public display of affection. The blonde empress clings to her daughter, claiming she nearly collapsed from longing, while Dazzling questions her mother's erratic behavior. With a hopeful expression, Hecate asks the young princess if she truly enjoyed the special treasure hunt held earlier that day. Feeling a sudden wave of flustered embarrassment, the pink-haired princess gives a hesitant confirmation as her maid giggles in the background. Hecate reveals she handcrafted those treasures during long nights on the battlefield, her heart constantly filled with thoughts of her daughter. Dazzling stares blankly, her purple eyes wide with a mix of shock and realization as she processes her mother's touching devotion. A soft squeeze and a strange tingle sounding occur as Dazzling clutches her treasure, recognizing a familiar and hauntingly nostalgic sensation. Behind the scenes, Hecate questions why Lilith brought the child, and the knight explains it was to soothe the Empress's loneliness. A sudden lift sounding occurs as Hecate hoists the princess high into the air, completely ignoring Dazzling's loud cries of protest. Commanding the attention of her knights, Hecate officially stops the training session to focus on her small, royal visitor. With a sharp shink sounding, Hecate stabs her sword into the wooden floor, ordering her armored men to fall in immediately. Hecate explains that the princess is present to observe their skills, choosing a demonstration to avoid the risk of any injury. The knights respond with a thunderous shout of loyalty, their voices unified in a formal, disciplined salute to their empress. In perfect unison, the soldiers begin a rhythmic song about their blue spirits and their eternal duty to protect the country. Dazzling watches with rapt attention as Hecate stands proudly before her men, the eternal sun shining upon their brave path. Under the clear blue sky, the knights finish their patriotic anthem, their voices echoing across the silent and vast training arena. Hecate asks for feedback on the performance, but Dazzling privately thinks the entire display was absolutely awful and beneath her. When Dame Lilith suggests they head back inside now, the stubborn princess flatly refuses, wanting to stay in the courtyard longer. Dazzling points toward the benches, announcing she will observe the knight's true skills before returning in time for her dinner. A bored dangle sounding accompanies the princess as she swings her legs from the bench, finding the knight's techniques surprisingly inexperienced. Dazzling's wandering gaze settles on something unusual in the courtyard, her curiosity finally piqued by a nearby large stone monument. A rhythmic step and scamper sounding follow the princess and her companion as they approach a massive, intricately carved stone statue. Under a radiant shine sounding, Dazzling discovers a beautiful statue of a praying woman and wonders about its mysterious story. The princess is struck by an eerie realization that the statue's face looks exactly like her own former divine appearance. A sudden jolt sounding occurs as a red-haired girl approaches Dazzling, explaining that her noble family gifted the monument. Startled by the unexpected visitor, Dazzling snaps at the laughing girl for scaring her and not announcing her presence sooner. Clearing her throat with an ahem sounding, the princess curiously asks the red-haired girl for more details about the statue's creation. The red-haired girl explains that the emperor commissioned several of these stone statues to decorate the imperial drill hall. While the red-haired girl watches, Dazzling remains deeply unsettled by a statue that so perfectly and suspiciously mirrors her past. Bathed in the golden glow of the setting sun, the stone figure stands as a silent, majestic monument to peace. Looking up at the serene face, The red-haired girl notes that the statue bears a striking and fascinating resemblance to someone. From a distance, the girl and the princess appear as small specks beside the fountain while they discuss the ancient monument. The red-haired girl shares that the statue was created as a prayer, her expression softening during the thoughtful explanation. She adds that artists usually choose faces they find most pleasing to the eye, smiling warmly at the listening princess. As evening falls, a maid calls out to the princess from a distance, announcing that her dinner is finally ready. Reflecting on the strange events of her day, Dazzling follows her two maids back into the grand and silent palace. A sudden whack and crash sounding occur as Dazzling collides with her white-haired father, Jeff, on the red-carpeted stairs. Jeff immediately scoops her up, offering a frantic apology, while Dazzling lets out a pained, ouch sounding before claiming she's okay. With his daughters safely in his arms, the emperor dismisses the maids, intending to personally escort her for the night. Jeff gazes at her with deep concern, asking if she's holding in pain, but the stubborn princess insists she can handle it. Jeff excitedly asks who she resembles more, though Dazzling privately thinks both her parents are the ones who resemble her. Tired of being carried like a baby, the princess requests to be put down, asserting she is capable of walking alone. With a playful wink sounding, Jeff refuses her request, insisting on carrying his precious daughter all the way to the dining room. A steady step sounding follows the pair as Jeff asks about her day and Dazzling admits class made it feel unique. A tiny flinch sounding occurs as Dazzling realizes the treasure hunt was secretly the most memorable and touching part of her day. Dazzling sits quietly, reflecting on the day while holding a small, handcrafted treasure. The princess admits her time in class was a unique experience, a sudden wave of maturity washing over her. A faint, shimmering sound occurs as a magical aura surrounds the humble, hand-sewn doll from her memories. In a tearful memory, a younger Dazzling clutches the same precious doll, seeking comfort during a moment of distress. Jeff promises to always provide comfort, his gentle hand resting reassuringly on his daughter's small head. Stunned by the unexpected warmth, Dazzling looks up at her father with a newfound sense of curious wonder. A soft realization dawns as Dazzling wonders if there is more to her parents' love than she initially believed. With a bright, twinkling expression, the Emperor's devotion makes Dazzling wonder if his love is what she was missing. Bathed in the clear afternoon light, the majestic imperial palace stands as a symbol of peace and royal tradition. A maid informs the princess that her friends have arrived in the playroom, and Dazzling calmly prepares for company. Dazzling enters the eerily quiet playroom, surprised that the usually loud and energetic children are nowhere to be seen. A sudden, playful sound occurs as a pair of pink bunny ears are placed onto the princess's head. With a sudden, energetic pop sounding, Carlisle and his companion jump out to surprise Dazzling with their animal headbands. The white-haired boy excitedly explains the headbands are a surprise gift, though the princess remains startled by the ambush. The energetic children suggest playing a game of pretend, their eyes shining with the simple joy of their age. A light, comical bonk sounding follows as the white-haired boy realizes their bird companion doesn't have its own headband. While Berith cries over his forgotten bird, the stubborn princess flatly refuses to wear her assigned animal ears. Berith tearfully asks the white bird if it's upset, his dramatic empathy clashing with Dazzling's stoic, bored expression. A happy, rhythmic sound occurs as Berith hops around, fully embracing his role as a cheerful, fluffy rabbit. Berith assigns a role to everyone, declaring Carlisle a wolf while labeling the skeptical princess as a raccoon. Curious about the missing member of their group, Dazzling asks where the light brown-haired girl, Ranwei, has gone. Dazzling is stunned to learn that Ranwei actually enjoys reading, finding it hard to believe she isn't just a blockhead. With a sudden, energetic jump sounding, Carlisle leads the way as Dazzling reluctantly prepares for another tiring playdate. Feeling increasingly miserable, the princess wonders how she's supposed to act like a raccoon during their noisy game. Later that day, Dazzling instructs her maid to let the tired children nap before she returns to her chambers. A steady, rhythmic step sounding follows the princess as she wanders the hallway, wondering if Ranwei is still reading. Dazzling stops before the grand library doors, curious to see if the noisy girl is still lost in her books. A sharp, echoing creak sounding occurs as the maid opens the door, allowing Dazzling to investigate Ranwei's strange absence. Stepping into the vast, silent library, Dazzling immediately notices a strange, heavy atmosphere hanging in the air. The princess spots a dark, unsettling stain spreading across the floor near the bookshelf, her suspicions instantly rising. With a sudden, swift turn sounding, Dazzling senses a menacing presence, as if evil thoughts have manifested into one. A haunting, magical sound occurs as a massive, red-shadowed demon looms over Ranwei, who is focused on her book. The dark, horned figure towers over the oblivious girl, its malicious energy contrasting with the quiet peace of the library. Dazzling quickly turns toward her companion, deeply concerned by the ominous cloud of evil thoughts surrounding Ranwei. Clutching her head in confusion, the princess wonders why a wasteland creature would appear in such a sacred place. Ranwei suddenly notices the princess's presence, looking up from her book with a curious and innocent expression. Dazzling rushes forward to ask if Ranwei saw anything unusual, but the girl notes that the strange feeling vanished. Ranwei remains confused by the sudden interrogation, and Dazzling decides to drop the matter for the moment. Relieved that the evil influence didn't take hold, the princess asks if Ranwei has been reading there all day. A soft, firm squeeze sounding follows as Ranwei hugs her book, admitting she was completely captivated by its contents. Dazzling remains skeptical, finding it hard to believe a child who can barely speak is genuinely interested in literature. Ranwei offers to share the book, revealing that she has been studying a complex volume on military tactics. The text describes a historical record of the brilliant strategies used by the world's most famous and powerful conquerors. The purple book, adorned with a shining star symbol, rests as a silent testament to ancient strategic knowledge. Surprised by the heavy subject matter, Dazzling asks the young girl why she would ever choose such a book. Ranwei answers with a simple, childlike logic, explaining she only chose it because the cover looked pretty. Still trying to gauge the girl's intelligence, Dazzling asks what the book is actually about. Surrounded by a bright burst of flowers, Ranwei cheerfully admits she has absolutely no idea what she's been reading. The sound of Berith's voice interrupts their conversation, signaling that the boys have finally finished their long nap. Though Ranwei wants to stay, the maid suggests returning another time, and the girl happily agrees to the plan. A tearful Berith calls out for the princess and Ranwei, while a calm Carlisle stands nearby. Sobbing, Berith explains to the group that waking up alone made him feel scared and abandoned. With a heavy sniffle sounding, Berith asks the princess if she hates him, relieved when she says no. A cheerful maid suggests a game of baking cookies to pass the time before lunch. The prospect of a fun new activity makes Berith and Ranwei's eyes sparkle with pure, childish joy. The children cheer yay as the maid brings out a tray of fresh dough to begin their game. While the maid explains kneading, the princess skeptically wonders if anything they bake will actually be edible. With a series of sniff sounding, Berith and Ronway play with the dough, making silly, crude jokes about it. As the boys discuss their plans for delicious cookies, the bored princess reminds them baking is optional. The princess looks on with mild annoyance, thinking that her companions are only motivated by their stomachs. A repetitive squish sounding follows as hands knead dough, making the princess feel nauseous about eating it later. Ronway and Berith encourage the princess to join the fun, and she reluctantly agrees to participate. With a proud raise and droop sounding, Berith shows off a lumpy dough figure he calls Bobby. Carlisle claims to have sculpted the princess's face out of dough, prompting her to ask for a look. The princess is unimpressed by the doughy representation, though Carlisle takes her sarcastic remark as a compliment. Watching the children work, the princess privately laments the massive waste of flour their art represents. The maid collects the dough for baking and introduces a mystery box game to keep the children occupied. She explains that whoever guesses the object inside the box correctly will be rewarded with a watermelon cake. Confident in her victory, the princess watches as Berith bravely volunteers to be the first one to guess. A sudden jolt sounding occurs as Berith reacts in terror to whatever he touches inside the dark box. With a panicked "hide" sounding, Berith screams about a monster and dives for cover behind a stoic Carlisle. A sudden blush sounding occurs on Carlisle's face as the princess mocks the boys for being such cowards. With a determined wiggle sounding, the princess steps forward to investigate the box, while the boys remain terrified. Carlisle warns the princess that something truly dangerous might be lurking inside, but she remains completely unfazed. A rhythmic rummage sounding follows as the princess calmly searches the box for the mysterious, supposedly scary object. A sudden achoo and rattle sounding occur, and the princess is disgusted to feel something wet and sticky. With a slow drip sounding, the princess stares at her hand, while Berith panics about being stuck. A sudden pop sounding occurs as Berith emerges from the box with a yellow sock in his mouth. Berith proudly declares that he defeated the monster for the princess, despite the object just being a sock. A tray of professionally baked, perfectly shaped cookies appears, looking far better than the children's doughy creations. Berith and Ronway are mesmerized by the beautiful treats, their earlier fears forgotten at the sight of food. With an energetic dash sounding, the children rush toward the tray, eager to devour the freshly baked cookies. The princess sighs as the maids wipe the children's hands, amazed by their single-minded obsession with food. The maid instructs the children to return to their seats and enjoy the treats with Princess Darjeeling. In a chorus of bad Berith, the children scold each other for trying to take the cookies first. With a heavy step sounding, the children bickered over who was more eager to eat the delicious-smelling snacks. Carlisle tries to mediate the argument, urging the others not to keep the princess waiting any longer. A maid politely presents the cookies to the princess, who offers a simple, polite thank you. A soft shine and gloomy sounding occur as the princess realizes these professional cookies definitely aren't theirs. A loud crunch and nom-nom sounding follows as the children eat, unaware the maids swapped their lumpy dough. Pointing to a devil-shaped cookie, the princess requests that the maid wrap it up for her bedroom later. The princess curiously asks about the mystery box game's winner and the promised prize of watermelon cake. A sudden flinch sounding occurs as the maid notes that since no one guessed, the cake remains available. Ronway cheers for the cake, while Berith lets out a relieved whoo sounding, happy that dessert is finally served. A magnificent watermelon-shaped cake, topped with a golden crown, sits majestically on a tall serving stand. While the others eat, the princess examines her slice, finding the humans' creative desserts somewhat strange. The princess observes the black seeds on the cake, mistaking them for her favorite treat, chocolate chips. Declaring her love for chocolate, the princess decides to selectively eat the chips from her slice of cake. A sudden, startled sounding occurs as Ronway and Berith watch the princess eat only the chocolate bits. Under a bright twinkle sounding, the emperor and empress praise their daughter's talent, though she remains skeptical. In Darjeeling's bedroom, the silver-haired emperor and blonde empress bicker over who gets credit for their planned family activity. The empress finds the homemade treat too precious to eat, insisting she'll keep it on her desk forever. Insulted by her claim, the emperor declares he should be the one to keep the princess's cookie instead. Stuck between her bickering parents, Princess Darjeeling fumes as they ignore the bedtime story they promised to read her. A sharp, rhythmic ticked sounding follows the princess as her frustration reaches its peak over her parents' childish behavior. Tired of their arguing, the princess ends the conflict by shoving half a cookie into each parent's mouth. With a soft, relieved pew sounding, Darjeeling finally settles into bed, glad to have a moment of quiet peace. The princess examines the purple volume on military tactics, remembering the strange, dark energy she felt when Ronway held it. A sudden, firm grab sounding follows as Darjeeling reaches for the book, determined to uncover its hidden secrets. Opening the ancient text, Darjeeling is met with mysterious, geometric symbols that seem to defy her long years of knowledge. The princess recalls Ronway's innocent joy while holding the book, finding it strange that such an ominous power surrounds it. Darjeeling plans to take the book to history class, though she loathes asking a certain snake for help. A steady, formal raise sounding occurs as Darjeeling hands the royal volume to her maid for safekeeping until class. A colorful array of art supplies sits ready on a garden table, signaling the start of a new lesson. The maid presents a speckled stone, announcing to the gathered children that today's activity involves decorating their own rocks. From a high vantage point, the children gather at a curved table in the garden to begin their painting project. With a playful, quiet hee-hee sounding, the pink-haired princess feels confident about showing off her superior artistic skills. A bright, energetic ta-da sounding follows as Ronway and Berith cheer about drawing their favorite sweets on their stones. The red-haired boy suggests a stone exchange, while Berith praises him for being the smartest student among them. A soft, light step sounding follows as Carlyle approaches Darjeeling, asking if she has finished her masterpiece. Carlyle mistakes the princess's painting of her mother for a handsome potato, much to her intense annoyance. The red-haired boy leans over, curious to see what Darjeeling has painted on her stone. A sudden, inquisitive, lean sounding occurs as the group stares in confusion at the princess's ambiguous artwork. A subtle, knowing smirk sounding follows as the red-haired boy watches Darjeeling's defensive reaction to her art. The red-haired boy reveals that he painted his own face, prompting the skeptical princess to ask for a look. A steady, confident extend sounding follows as the boy displays a perfectly detailed miniature of his own face on a stone. Darjeeling offers a rare compliment, while Carlyle watches the interaction with a visibly sour and jealous expression. A sudden, sheepish blush and hushed sounding occur as Carlyle tucks his own poorly drawn stone behind his back. The red-haired boy notes that Berith and Ronway also created some amusing and colorful pictures on their rocks. A firm, rhythmic squeeze sounding follows as the boy holds a stone, encouraging Darjeeling to look at the other's work. Ronway and Berith proudly display their rocks, featuring a cute pink cat face and a red speckled pattern. The children celebrate their work with happy hopping, while Darjeeling notices the supply of stones has quickly vanished. Since she only painted a few, Darjeeling suggests they only trade one stone to satisfy the group's request. A proud, loud ta-da sounding follows as Darjeeling presents her cat rock, which bears a uniquely strange blue face. The group agrees to the trade as they gather in the sunlit conservatory, surrounded by blooming red roses. A wide view reveals the ornate garden where Darjeeling waits for the next activity to be prepared. Watching the maids work, the princess correctly guesses that another event is about to take place in the garden. A cheerful yay sounding follows as the maids invite the children to gather for a special puppet show. A dark-haired maid prepares the stage, announcing a play about the legendary journey of 7 rock brothers. She narrates the tale of 7 colorful brothers who were rejected by their village for being different from the rest. The story depicts their guide, a squirrel who leads the brothers to the world tree to meet a powerful deity. At the summit, the brothers are shocked to discover that their humble guide was actually the deity in disguise. One brother kneels in prayer, begging the deity to grant their wish for acceptance and beauty. The deity grants the wish, transforming the brothers into a vibrant, multicolored rainbow stretching across the bright blue sky. A bright, celebratory ta-da sounding concludes the play as the brothers are finally loved as eternally beautiful beings. The audience offers their applause, followed by a tired yawn sounding as the younger children grow sleepy. Darjeeling remains cynical, reflecting on how beautiful endings aren't always truly happy for the subjects involved. The red-haired boy sits nearby, his expression mirroring the princess's lack of interest in the simplistic children's story. A long, tired yawn sounding occurs as the maids conclude art class, leading the exhausted children toward their naps. A sudden, sharp rise sounding follows as the red-haired boy stands, telling Darjeeling the class was completely uneducational. Carlyle wonders if the current garden activity was another surprise prepared by the Empress. Darjeeling ponders her parents' cooperation before questioning if Carlyle actually enjoyed the art class and puppet show. Carlyle admits to looking bored, explaining he was simply concentrating deeply on understanding the simplistic play. He notes his dislike for the deity's squirrel disguise, prompting a startled reaction from the pink-haired princess. Feeling frustrated by his critical nature, Darjeeling concludes that he must not have enjoyed the performance at all. Carlyle stands to clarify that the play was quite memorable, which the princess accepts with a brief acknowledgement. Proposing a gift in return for the new experience, Carlyle leaves the princess puzzled by his unpredictable behavior. Their conversation is interrupted by a frantic maid shouting for Her Highness as she rushes toward the conservatory. The dark-haired maid offers to carry the princess to her next destination, assuming she must be exhausted. Declining the offer, Darjeeling requests her military tactics volume to prepare questions for her upcoming history lesson. Inside the library, the green-haired teacher is surprised by the princess's sudden arrival on a non-class day. A sudden thud sounding occurs as Darjeeling drops the purple book onto the teacher's desk for inspection. Crossing her arms, the princess demands that the teacher investigate the book for any hidden or unusual properties. The teacher acts wounded by the lack of a proper greeting, while Darjeeling scoffs at her dramatic performance. Taking the pretty book in hand, the teacher ponders its appearance, while the princess watches with intense focus. A crisp flip sounding follows as the teacher opens the ancient volume to scan its mysterious geometric contents. Darjeeling mutters her doubts under her breath, watching closely for any sign of recognition from the clever teacher. The teacher begins to speculate aloud, guessing that someone had the audacity to exhibit their inner darkness. With a subtle smile, she concludes that someone displayed their evil thoughts directly in front of the princess. Darjeeling finds the teacher's behavior off-putting as a small snake illustration performs a quiet lick-lick sounding. Disappointed by the lack of concrete information, the princess prepares to leave while the teacher begs for more details. The teacher continues to nag, desperate to know exactly where these evil thoughts appeared and their specific shape. Relenting, Darjeeling reveals she saw demon-shaped energy within the palace library, leaving the teacher intrigued by the discovery. The teacher rests her chin in thought, repeating the princess's findings with a knowing and mysterious expression. Darjeeling offers a stern warning against any foolish schemes, but the teacher dismisses her concerns with a smile. Letting out a soft laugh, the snake teacher promises safety, while the princess notes her persuasive silver tongue. As Darjeeling decides to depart, the green-haired woman politely offers to escort her out of the grand study. A sudden da-da-dash sounding echoes through the hall as the children race toward the princess in excitement. Under a sparkle-sparkle sounding, the children beg Darjeeling to follow them to see something absolutely incredible. The teacher watches as the energetic children drag a reluctant Carlyle along for their next grand adventure. A quiet moment of reflection passes as the teacher gazes into the distance, her mind clearly on the princess's revelation. A rhythmic step-step sounding follows the group as the princess asks what the children are so excited about. The teacher feigns ignorance with a closed-eye smile, following closely behind the princess as they descend the stairs. The group reaches a set of massive, ornate golden doors, where the children stop in anticipation. The teacher remarks on the princess's unique ability to attract interesting companions, much to Darjeeling's amusement. Pointing toward her bickering friends, the princess insists they are just ordinary children, despite their high energy. With a firm step-step sounding, Darjeeling moves through the open doors toward the source of the commotion. A steady step sounding follows the princess as the children urge her to hurry toward the garden. Reaching their destination, a final step sounding occurs as a maid greets the group with a formal welcome. Two maids wearing large animal masks introduce themselves as fairies sent to lead the children to magic. Darjeeling remains entirely skeptical, recognizing the maids' familiar voices despite their ridiculous rabbit and raccoon costumes. A playful hop-hop sounding follows the masked maids as they lead the excited children into the garden. Carlyle wonders about the maids' ability to breathe, while Darjeeling logically assumes their masks have hidden ventilation points. The group marches together toward a sun-drenched section of the palace grounds filled with a vibrant, colorful display. A majestic conservatory stands in the distance, surrounded by lush flowers under a bright, star-dotted sky. The children cheer about reaching the land of fairies, surrounded by a magical sea of colorful, heart-shaped balloons. A confused quack sounding follows as Darjeeling surveys the balloon-filled garden, questioning the purpose of this unusual curriculum. With a joyful giggle sounding and a quick step sounding, the children dive headfirst into the soft pile of balloons. Holding a green balloon, the dark-haired boy expresses his wonder at the fairy tale-like scenery surrounding them. A gentle squeeze sounding follows as the boy admires his balloon, reminding Darjeeling that they are all still children. The masked maids announce that two fairy kings are about to make a grand entrance for the children. A curious thought bubble wonders if Hecate and Jeff are planning to don ridiculous disguises for the event. A sudden da-dun sounding follows as the silver-haired emperor and blonde-haired empress appear in ornate, masked costumes. A sudden shocker sounding follows as Darjeeling realizes her parents have truly abandoned their dignity for this play. The children are captivated, asking with wide eyes if the newcomers are truly the legendary fairy kings. With a proud ta-da sounding, the kings claim they've come to reward students, sparking immediate hopes for cake. A rhythmic blow sounding follows as the entire group, including the masked royals, begins inflating colorful garden balloons. Concentrating deeply, the dark-haired boy manages to inflate a large yellow balloon with a determined, steady breath. Berith excitedly displays a blue balloon balanced on her head, calling for the pink-haired princess to watch her. A frantic rub-rub sounding and a frustrated R sounding occur as Berith creates static on Darjeeling's hair. A playful bounce sounding follows as the children jump enthusiastically into the massive pile of heart-shaped balloons. A dizzying roll sounding follows as Darjeeling tumbles through the balloons, her eyes crossing from the chaotic movement. A sharp ouch sounding follows as the princess falls, prompting the blonde-haired empress to rush toward her side. Kneeling in the garden, the concerned empress asks if her daughter is hurt after her tumble into the balloons. Darjeeling remains deadpan, noting that this particular fairy king bears a striking and suspicious resemblance to her mother. Hecate nervously laughs off the accusation, while the princess lets out a long, weary sigh, sounding of disbelief. A tired yawn sounding escapes Darjeeling, leading the empress to realize just how exhausted the young girl is. A sudden, sharp rise sounding follows as the silver-haired emperor stands, shocked that the princess missed her nap. With a firm raise sounding of his hand, Jeff announces that the activity must end for Darjeeling's health. Waving goodbye, the children watch as the royal parents prepare to carry the exhausted princess back to her room. A quiet pew sounding follows as Darjeeling finally relaxes, relieved to have escaped the chaotic, magical garden class. Once the others depart, Darjeeling tells her parents they can finally remove their masks and end the charade. A gentle pull sounding and rub sounding follow as the parents unmask, praising Darjeeling for her cooperation. A rhythmic step sounding follows the family as the parents admit they had a slow day at work. Darjeeling remains skeptical, guessing they dumped their work on others, but she still warns them not to overdo it. A sudden teary sounding occurs as Hecate insists that spending time with her daughter is her top priority. Deeply moved by the princess's rare words of appreciation, the parents are overcome with a wave of affection. A happy lift sounding and quack sounding follow as the family heads toward the back garden for more quality time. Seated for tea, Darjeeling mentions the rock art she created earlier, prompting the empress to ask for them. Hecate is absolutely overjoyed by the beautiful rock portrait of her face, begging to keep the precious gift. A sudden, jealous teary sounding occurs as Jeff wonders if the princess drew a portrait of his face too. Darjeeling deadpans that she already drew a portrait of him earlier, revealing an abstract and rather simplistic yellow face. Jeff watches with a visible look of jealousy as the empress continues to gloat over her own gift. A bright beam sounding follows as Darjeeling promises to draw her father a proper portrait during their next activity. Asked if she enjoyed the educational games, Darjeeling thinks privately that they were all quite silly and childish. A joyful sparkle sounding follows as Darjeeling requests a new and special dessert after enjoying the watermelon cake. The parents fall into deep thought, considering what unique and impressive treat they can offer their beloved daughter. A sudden snap sounding follows as Hecate gets an idea, leaning in to whisper a secret to the emperor. A quiet whisper sounding continues as the parents hatch a plan while the princess watches them in confusion. A sudden clap sounding follows as Jeff praises Hecate's wisdom, fully supporting the new and mysterious dessert plan. With a light hee-hee sounding and ha-ha sounding, the empress promises the special treat will be ready by tomorrow. Surrounded by a sparkle sparkle sounding, the parents excitedly promise Darjeeling a great treat that leaves her bewildered. A sudden grab sounding occurs as the emperor takes his daughter's hand, leading the family back toward the palace. Jeff feels neglected, pouting like a child as he watches Darjeeling hold only her mother's hand during their walk. Darjeeling looks back with a flat expression, internally questioning why a grown man is acting so childishly for attention. Relenting to the emperor's silent plea, the pink-haired princess offers him her other hand to hold as they walk. The family walks together toward the grand building, finally in perfect, albeit slightly ridiculous, harmony under the sun. A rhythmic step-step sounding follows Darjeeling the next day, as she wonders how noisy her friends will be. A sudden, loud crash sounding and bustle sounding from behind the door startle the princess as she arrives. A collective ha-ha sounding and ke sounding follow as Darjeeling realizes the children are simply playing together in chaos. A sudden dash sounding echoes through the hallway as someone rushes toward the room where the princess is waiting. Darjeeling greets her energetic friends, noting their high spirits despite the early morning hour as they gather around her. With a quick sweat sounding, Ranwei explains he was simply playing with his sister to avoid boredom during the wait. A tired flop sounding follows as the children collapse onto the floor, huffing while wishing for something cold to eat. A smiling maid announces that the royal couple has ordered special snacks that will arrive for them in just a few minutes. A sudden dun sounding and rattle sounding follow as a cart laden with chilled strawberry desserts is wheeled into the room. With a proud ta-da sounding, the maid presents a beautiful spread of parfaits and ice cream for the excited children to enjoy. Letting out an impressed ooh sounding, Darjeeling admires a parfait, while her duck toy lets out a playful flap sounding. A playful squish sounding occurs as the princess tells her duck toy it cannot have snacks because it is just a stuffed animal. The children enjoy their cold treats inside the sunlit conservatory, surrounded by vibrant flowers and lush greenery under the glass roof. A close-up reveals a delicious ice cream treat topped with thick cream and fresh strawberries, shimmering brightly under the morning sun. A rhythmic quack sounding follows as Ranwei offers his toy a bite, resulting in a sudden, playful extend sounding from the duck. Watching the toys flap sounding, Darjeeling remains skeptical while wondering what kind of magical stuffed animal her friend is actually holding. The red-haired Sasha arrives with a polite greeting, explaining his delay was caused by an unfortunate problem with his carriage. A beautifully decorated Matryoshka doll is displayed, featuring intricate floral patterns and a serene face painted in soft pink and gold. Sasha explains the rare nesting doll was a gift from his uncle with a light heh sounding as the children watch. A sudden wow sounding escapes Ranwei as he discovers the dolls hidden inside, while Sasha expresses his honor at their interest. With a quick turn sounding, Darjeeling acknowledges the unique toy, while her attention shifts toward the quiet and withdrawn Carlisle. The princess notes that Carlisle seems different and upset today, privately wondering what might be bothering the black-haired boy. Leaving the group behind, Darjeeling walks alone along the stone path by the garden pond toward a quiet section of the grounds. A peaceful schwa sounding from the fountain is interrupted by a startled sounding as Carlisle notices the princess has found him. A frantic wipe sounding follows as Carlisle tries to hide his tears, apologizing for showing such an ugly side of himself. Darjeeling asks if he is worried about something, observing that he truly does not seem like his usual composed self today. When Carlyle remains silent, the princess sternly suggests she may have wasted her time coming to check on him in the garden. Carlyle quickly apologizes, explaining to the princess that he simply has to leave the palace a little bit early today. He begins to explain his reason, as the sparkling water of the garden fountain flows gracefully behind them in the sunlight. With a heavy heart, Carlyle reveals that today marks the tragic anniversary of the day his beloved parents passed away. Darjeeling reflects on his words, while a distant memory of crying and heavy footsteps echoes through the darkness of her mind. A heavy step sounding follows a flashback of nobles walking through a dark hall while a baby's cries ring out. Carlyle explains he is attending a memorial and lied to his friends to avoid worrying them with his difficult family matters. The princess asks why he even bothered coming today, noting how visibly upset he is by the significance of the date. A nervous fidget sounding occurs as Carlyle admits he didn't want Ronway and Bereth to know about his personal struggles. He explains that his friends would surely cry if they saw him having a hard time, showing his deep consideration for them. Darjeeling remarks that Carlyle is exceptionally thoughtful for his age, clearly moved by his maturity and his care for his friends. A rhythmic step sounding follows the pair as they walk back toward the main group, waiting in the garden conservatory. Sasha greets them as they return, noting that the two of them had disappeared and expressing concern for Carlyle's earlier mood. Carlyle offers a small, reassuring smile while telling Sasha that he feels much better after getting some fresh air and quiet. A sudden flinch sounding occurs as Sasha teases Carlyle about his family status before being called over to start their game. The children begin a word relay game where Sasha offers freedom as his answer for a word starting with the letter F. Ronway cheers excitedly about a green ribbon, continuing the fast-paced game with high energy as the other children watch him play. A sudden waver sounding and hesitate sounding follow as Bereth struggles to find a word, her eyes beginning to well with tears. A loud wah sounding follows as Bereth bursts into tears, begging the princess to give her a hint for the game. A frantic wah sounding echoes as the maid tries to comfort the sobbing girl, while Darjeeling watches the scene in disbelief. With a weary sigh sounding and a gentle sniffle sounding, Darjeeling relents and promises to help her friend with a hint. A sudden sniffle sounding follows as Bereth's face lights up with immediate joy and relief at the princess's kind offer. A determined wipe sounding and clench sounding follow as Bereth announces she is finally ready to continue the word game. Darjeeling falls into deep thought, considering what appropriate word starting with the letter N she should offer for the next turn. With a sudden realization, Bereth excitedly shouts that she thought of an answer even before the clever princess did. A rhythmic clap sounding follows as the group celebrates Bereth's quick thinking, while Darjeeling stands back in quiet observation. Looking absolutely overjoyed, Bereth happily explains how the book she read emphasized the importance of knowing the true nature of things. Bereth and Ronway excitedly tell Darjeeling it is her turn, but she suggests playing a different game instead. Both children express their love for the nesting doll game, clearly enjoying the simple toy Sasha brought along. A weary sounding follows as Darjeeling complains that the educational game is far too complicated for her. Bereth pouts and insists she is not just a kid, clearly offended by Darjeeling's dismissal of their shared play. A loud groan sounding follows as Darjeeling collapses, while Sasha suggests taking a quiet break in the royal library. A playful jump sounding follows as the energetic group agrees, dragging the exhausted pink-haired princess along with them. A rhythmic step sounding follows as Berith asks about the specific book Ronway wanted to read during their last visit. Looking at the garden tools, Darjeeling explains that the book was borrowed and suggests finding a new one together. The children and their maid walk through the sunlit garden gates toward the palace's grand and silent library building. The scene shifts to the vast interior of the royal library, where towering shelves are bathed in soft morning sunlight. A playful woo sounding and yay sounding follow as the children run inside, leaving Darjeeling to question their energy. A sudden dash sounding follows as the pair races ahead, while Darjeeling watches them with a weary, skeptical expression. An impressed ooh sounding follows as Ronway discovers a beautiful green book adorned with a gilded angel on its cover. Ronway excitedly asks Carlisle to help him reach the high shelf to retrieve the mysterious and beautiful angel book. A quick grab sounding follows as Carlisle reaches up, successfully taking the requested volume down for his energetic friend. A light hee-hee sounding follows as Ronway brings his prize back to the table where Darjeeling is already reading. A quiet glimpse sounding follows as Darjeeling observes her friend, relieved that the library has finally brought some peace. Still engrossed in her book, Darjeeling wonders if the others have found their own comfortable and quiet spots to read. A sinister, dark aura begins to manifest around Berith as she sits alone on the floor reading her book. A cryptic system notification appears amidst jagged darkness, declaring that the child is currently absorbing new and powerful information. A sudden startled sounding follows as Berith senses an intruder looking around the darkened corner of the royal library. A massive whoosh sounding follows as a dark, horned essence erupts behind her, claiming to be her true nature. A rhythmic badoom sounding follows the pulsing of a glowing, red-veined heart floating within the oppressive and swirling darkness. A quick blink sounding follows as Berith's red eyes snap open, signaling a strange and sudden internal awakening. With a firm shut sounding, Berith closes her book and demands that the hidden presence reveal itself immediately. A sudden pop sounding follows as a winged purple entity appears, acknowledging that the girl has finally noticed it. A confident humph sounding follows as Berith dismisses any danger, claiming she and the entity are actually friends. A playful giggle sounding follows as the spirit warns that God is watching, prompting Berith to mock his concern. A light wave sounding follows as Berith challenges God to come down himself if he is truly so worried. With a sharp point sounding and a command to disappear, Berith unleashes a targeted beam of dark, destructive energy. A faint, woozy sounding follows as Berith clutches her forehead, feeling the sudden and heavy toll on her energy. A loud crash sounding and a jolt sounding follow as Berith collapses, shocking both the maid and the princess. A rapid dash sounding follows as the group rushes toward the fallen girl, calling her name in frantic panic. A teary sounding follows as Ronway cries, while the weakened Berith mumbles about feeling dizzy before losing consciousness. The children and the maid gather around a grand red bed, watching over the unconscious girl with deep concern. A soft zzz sounding follows as Carlisle reassures the group that she is likely just exhausted from overexertion. A loud wah sounding follows as the distraught Ronway continues to weep, blaming his sister's state on their play. A repetitive knock sounding precedes an announcement that someone has arrived to take the young Lord Carlisle home early. Carlisle offers a polite apology to the princess, expressing his regret for having to leave during such a crisis. The boys wave goodbye as Carlisle departs, with Sasha thanking the princess for looking after Berith in their stead. A lingering pause sounding follows as Carlisle and Sasha exchange a final, knowing glance before the carriage ride home. With a polite bow sounding, Sasha acknowledges the princess as he prepares to help move the sleeping Bereth elsewhere. Sasha instructs the maid to move the girl to another room for a nap to prevent further physical collapse. The maid carries the unconscious girl away as Ronway begs Darjeeling to look after his sister with great care. A weary pew sounding follows as Darjeeling settles into her chair, planning to send the siblings home together later. A sudden stare sounding follows as Darjeeling realizes Sasha is watching her, questioning why he is still lingering there. A light hee-hee sounding follows as Sasha prepares to ask the princess a question that has been on his mind. Sasha wonders aloud why Carlisle had to leave early, suspecting that it involves something far beyond simple family affairs. Darjeeling suspects Sasha has ulterior motives, privately wondering what information the sharp-witted boy is truly trying to extract. The pink-haired princess reflects on Sasha's surprisingly keen nature, noting his unusual and sharp-witted perceptiveness for a child. Thought bubbles reflect on Carlisle's status as the lone survivor of a now-defunct noble family. Darjeeling grows suspicious of Sasha's interest in Carlisle and bluntly tells the boy she lacks the answers he seeks. With a playful shrug sounding, Sasha praises the princess's intelligence while ignoring her clear irritation. Darjeeling glares intensely from her ornate chair, ordering Sasha to treat his friend with more kindness and consideration. Sasha admits he may have seemed overly wary of Carlisle, leading Darjeeling to suggest they drop the subject entirely. A light hee-hee sounding follows as Sasha offers a cheerful apology for making the princess feel uncomfortable. As Sasha departs, Darjeeling inwardly grumbles that the red-haired boy is becoming increasingly annoying. The afternoon sun shines brightly through the large, arched palace windows overlooking the lush garden grounds. With a sudden gasp sounding, Darjeeling wakes up and realizes she accidentally dozed off in her chair. A sudden jolt sounding occurs as the green-haired empress leans in to greet the startled princess with a smile. The empress explains she came to check on her, but Darjeeling insists she wasn't the one who fainted earlier. A rhythmic step sounding echoes as the king and empress move through the grand, red-accented royal bedroom. Darjeeling looks confused as she realizes her parents have been watching over her during her unexpected nap. A soft smile sounding follows as the young, red-eyed Bereth appears in a memory of her recent mysterious awakening. A quiet fshh sounding follows the king as he carries the small girl away under the empress's watchful gaze. The empress ponders the unbelievable emergence of such a powerful entity within the body of a fragile child. She considers that the educational games the children played might have been far more effective than anyone realized. Darjeeling remains silent and skeptical, wondering what her mother is truly implying about their recent play sessions. The vast palace grounds sit peacefully under a sparkling, starlit night sky as the embodied day's events finally conclude. Before retiring for the night, Darjeeling asks her parents to show her the gift Sasha brought for her. With a deliberate extend sounding, a colorful nesting doll is presented, having been sent from a distant country. The king and empress look on with genuine fascination, marveling at the unique and intricate design of the toy. A rhythmic clap sounding follows as the parents cheer, eager to see how the fascinating nesting doll actually works. A sharp clack sounding follows as the princess expertly takes apart the toy, revealing the smaller dolls hidden inside. With a nervous fidget sounding, Darjeeling admits she was too busy dealing with Ronway's drama to take her nap. A rhythmic step sounding follows as the king carries the tired princess to her large, comfortable red bed. The king expresses his deep concern, noting how shocking it must have been to see a friend fall ill. The parents discuss an upcoming tea meeting with Marchioness Fleur, shifting their focus to political and social matters. Looking concerned, the king asks the empress to check on the Marchioness's daughter during their scheduled visit. A gentle pat sounding follows as the king reaches out to comfort his young daughter before she sleeps. The king offers a warm smile and prays for Darjeeling's continued good health and safety within the palace. He asks what a child needs to grow tall and strong, to which Darjeeling sleepily replies with a one-word answer. A loud smooch sounding follows as the doting parents plant affectionate kisses on the princess's cheeks. With an enthusiastic clap sounding, the parents announce they will sing a lullaby to help her drift off. The king and empress begin to sing together, their eyes closed in deep concentration as they perform for her. The parents' singing becomes incredibly intense and loud, filling the room with overwhelming and unexpected musical energy. Believing the princess has finally fallen asleep, the parents quietly instruct the staff to clean the room in silence. With a weary sigh sounding, Darjeeling remains wide awake, regretting not asking for a simple bedtime story instead. The next morning, the family gathers for tea in a sunlit room filled with towering shelves of ancient books. A gaunt sounding follows the princess's expression as she sits at the table, looking utterly exhausted and drained. The king looks worried, noting that Darjeeling appears unusually pale despite her very early bedtime the night before. The empress suggests making the nightly lullabies a permanent tradition to ensure the princess gets better rest. Darjeeling is internally horrified by the prospect of more loud singing, her face contorting in pure, sleepless dread. With a sudden sweat sounding, the princess tries to find a polite way to reject her parents' musical offerings. She lies and claims she would much rather have a music box to listen to instead of live singing. A repetitive knock sounding precedes an announcement that Sir Ithian has arrived to escort the king to his meeting. Sir Ithian enters the room and formally announces that he is there to lead the king to his appointment. He reports that the prototype for a new cooling apparatus is complete, sparking the king's professional interest. With a disappointed frown sounding, the king laments that his precious time with Darjeeling must be cut short. Darjeeling looks on with a curious expression, wondering what a cooling apparatus could possibly be. The silver-haired king explains a new magical cooling apparatus designed to protect agricultural crops from the sweltering heat. A quick nod sounding follows Darjeeling's thoughtful chewing as she reflects on the potential for technology to aid the poor. The blonde-haired empress asks about her daughter's desires, prompting Darjeeling to carefully formulate a simple, age-appropriate request. Darjeeling suggests a family picnic, a request that catches the attention of the attentive, blonde-haired empress. An enthusiastic agreement follows as the empress plans a garden excursion, while a repetitive munch sounding continues from the girl. The silver-haired king smiles warmly, recalling fond memories of a past picnic shared with the former empress. A lingering pause fills the grand room as the royal family shares a quiet moment together around the table. A memory reveals a childhood picnic where the young king and empress bickered incessantly, despite an adult's stern intervention. Darjeeling asks if the king truly enjoyed himself back then, noting his surprisingly nostalgic expression regarding the past. The king admits that while he got into trouble, those naughty memories bring him great comfort during difficult times. A quick wink sounding follows the king's playful gesture, though Darjeeling finds her father's doting behavior quite unsettling. The empress finds it incredibly odd that the king cherishes memories of a picnic where they did nothing but fight. A rhythmic badoom sounding follows as Darjeeling clutches her chest, frustrated by a sudden, recurring ache she feels around them. The Empress notes that tea time is approaching and suggests they conclude their morning chat to prepare for the day. As the family prepares to move, a brown-haired advisor formally reminds the king of his scheduled professional meeting. A teary sounding follows as the king dramatically laments his hatred for meetings, much to the amusement of the Empress. The group walks through the massive, ornate palace doors as the king reluctantly prepares to fulfill his royal duties. The sun shines brilliantly over the grand palace exterior, marking a beautiful day for the children to play. Darjeeling and the Empress walk together through the lush gardens, appreciating the clear weather and the peaceful atmosphere. The Empress teases a surprise for Darjeeling's upcoming birthday banquet, leaving the pink-haired girl wondering what they have planned. A sharp dud-dun sounding follows as the Empress reveals several large stone statues modeled after Darjeeling. Darjeeling stares in open-mouthed shock at the elaborate statues, her expression a mix of confusion and pure bewilderment. The Empress explains that the statues commemorate Darjeeling at different stages of her life, a tribute to her growth. Darjeeling insists on being put down so she can walk toward her friends and escape the embarrassing statues. The Empress encourages her to play all morning before her afternoon classes begin, and Darjeeling sets off into the garden. A sudden quack sounding follows as a small, round bird creature acts distressed near the pink-haired princess. A sharp dud-dun sounding follows the discovery of a small worm crawling on the grass, disturbing the bird. Darjeeling realizes the bird is simply upset over the worm, watching as a quick hop sounding follows its frantic movement. A sudden prickle of awareness hits the princess as she feels an intense, hidden gaze watching her from afar. The Empress asks if she is frightened of the tiny creature, but Darjeeling adamantly blames the bird's cowardice instead. The blonde-haired Empress offers to handle the situation, her smile bright as she looks down at her daughter. White-haired Berith and black-haired Sasha run across the lawn, calling out to the princess as they approach the group. A quick dash sounding follows as the children reach Darjeeling, with Berith frantically asking if the bird was injured. Berith points excitedly at the ground, recognizing the worm from their previous play session during the treasure hunt. A quick dash sounding follows as Berith grabs the worm and runs toward her mother, ignoring Sasha's calls to wait. Berith announces her find to Marchioness Fleur, holding the treasure she discovered exactly where the princess had been standing. A sudden turn sounding follows as the brown-haired Marchioness looks at the small, wriggling creature in her daughter's hands. Berith excitedly introduces the worm to her mother, her eyes shining with pride over her unusual and lively garden find. Marchioness Fleur notes Berith's habit of collecting odd things, while Berith explains the princess had previously let it go. A warm smile follows as the Marchioness thanks her daughter for thinking of her even when finding a common worm. A soft huff sounding follows as the black-haired Sasha arrives, looking toward the Marchioness as she sits at the table. Sasha advises Berith that while saying goodbye is difficult, the worm truly belongs back out in the garden soil. Marchioness Fleur agrees with Sasha's assessment, gently telling Berith that her new friend needs to be in the earth. The Marchioness explains with a laugh that worms simply need to live underground to be happy and healthy. An illustration depicts the worm returning to its cozy underground home after getting lost during its outdoor excursion. A gentle pat sounding follows as the Marchioness comforts Berith, reminding her that the worm's family is waiting. Berith looks down at the tiny creature in her hands, carefully considering the words of the adults around her. Determined to do what is right, Berith crouches by a bush and promises to return the worm home safely. Berith waves a small hand toward the grass, bidding the worm a final farewell as it disappears into the greenery. A rhythmic step sounding follows as the Empress and Darjeeling approach the Marchioness and Sasha for their afternoon tea. The pink-haired princess looks on as the empress thanks Marchioness Fleur for traveling a long distance to visit. Marchioness Fleur, wearing a teal gown, bows gracefully as she formally greets the empress on behalf of her house. Politeness fills the air as the Marchioness and Darjeeling exchange friendly greetings against the backdrop of the palace. The Marchioness explains that Ronway is feeling unwell, prompting the Empress to express her concern for the girl's recovery. Darjeeling reflects privately on Ronwa's health, wondering why the normally vibrant girl hasn't recovered since their time in the library. The princess offers a kind wish for her friend's health, and the Marchioness warmly thanks her for the thoughtful sentiment. A sudden pause follows as a white ball rolls past the blonde empress while she sits at the table. A repetitive wipe sounding follows as Sasha cleans Bereth's hands, reminding the white-haired girl to greet the empress properly. Sasha and a nervous, blushing Bereth offer their formal greetings to the empress while standing among the garden flowers. A playful whoosh sounding follows as the empress laughs, inviting the well-mannered children of Fleur to join them. Darjeeling observes the gathering, noting that the Vladimir family, including the red-haired Sasha, was not invited to this tea. A humph sounding follows a memory of the red-haired Sasha as Darjeeling considers the exclusion of the Vladimir family. The blonde empress beams with joy, announcing it is finally time to enjoy tea now that everyone is seated. A lavish display of tiered treats, macarons, and strawberries sparkles under the sun, ready for the royal garden party. A sudden quack sounding follows as Darjeeling prepares to eat, surrounded by an abundance of delicious sandwiches and cakes. Bereth looks absolutely delighted, her face covered in cream, as she exclaims over the delicious taste of the treats. The Empress giggles at the sight of the white-haired girl, pointing out the cream smeared all over her face. Marchioness Fleur instructs Bereth to use a napkin, while a repetitive wipe sounding follows the girl's messy eating habits. Sasha offers his sister a lesson in manners, suggesting she eat in smaller bites to keep her hands clean. Bereth watches in awe as Sasha demonstrates his refined eating technique, eager to emulate his polished behavior at the table. A soft ha-ha sounding follows as the Empress remarks on how wonderful it is to see the children bonding. Sipping her tea, the Empress compliments Marchioness Fleur on the exceptional upbringing and manners of her young children. The Marchioness expresses her honor at the compliment, while Bereth declares she is full and ready to go play. A joyful yay sounding follows as the children run into the garden, leaving the adults to their private conversation. Darjeeling watches the children depart with a bored expression, noticing the adults' tone shifting toward more serious, hidden matters. The blonde Empress leans forward, her expression turning grave as she discusses the progress of a secret, long-term investigation. Marchioness Fleur listens intently, her eyes closed as she acknowledges the Empress's inquiry about a past poisoning incident. A loud growl sounding precedes a huff sounding as the energetic children and a maid race past the tea table. A heavy pant sounding follows as Darjeeling hides behind a bush, frustrated by her body's lack of physical stamina. A quick peek sounding follows as Darjeeling eavesdrops, hearing the adults discuss finding a crucial clue after years of searching. The Empress touches her lip thoughtfully, questioning if the mastermind behind the poisoning has truly been identified at last. A dark memory reveals shadowy figures, confirming the culprit was indeed an enemy who opposed the Bergamot family. Marchioness Fleur's expression becomes determined as she speaks of her plans to keep the collected evidence hidden and safe. Sasha stands alone, looking toward the sprawling palace as the sun shines brightly through the clouds overhead. Darjeeling realizes the Marchioness cares deeply for Carlyle, making a sincere effort that goes beyond simple royal orders. A sharp clench sounding follows Darjeeling's irritation, remembering how she was once an empress who knew every royal secret. She finds it deeply frustrating that her current status as a young princess prevents her from joining important political discussions. A sudden rustle sounding catches Darjeeling's attention, making her realize the risk she is taking by eavesdropping so closely. A quiet whisper sounding follows a shiver sounding as Bareth suddenly appears, startling the hiding. A loud arg sounding follows a rustle sounding as Darjeeling screams in shock, her hiding place compromised by Bareth. Darjeeling is internally panicked, certain that her loud reaction will expose her eavesdropping to the Empress and the Marchioness. A rhythmic step sounding follows as the Empress approaches, noticing Darjeeling's pale face and questioning if she feels unwell. A quick raise sounding follows Darjeeling's attempt to look normal, though she wonders why the Empress always suspects illness. A sudden brain spark follows as Darjeeling realizes she can use the Empress's worry to escape her afternoon lessons. Feigning exhaustion, Darjeeling claims her lack of napping is catching up to her, prompting the Empress to look concerned. The Empress is saddened by the princess's fatigue and urges her to rest immediately to maintain her health. Marchioness Fleur agrees completely, emphasizing that plenty of sleep is necessary for the young princess to grow strong. A bright smile sounding follows Darjeeling's internal triumph as she successfully manages to get her afternoon lessons postponed. The sun sets a golden glow over the massive palace architecture, marking the end of a long, eventful day. Time passes quickly, and Darjeeling finds herself back at her desk, wishing she could have delayed her lessons even longer. Green-haired Lilith asks the pink-haired princess if she slept well, as Darjeeling admits her young body tires quite easily. A soft chuckle sounding follows as Lilith asks if the princess has questions before their military tactics lesson begins. Darjeeling needs a moment to think, while Lilith waits patiently to assist her young pupil in the royal study. Reflecting on her eavesdropping, Darjeeling considers the secret evidence showing the Bergamot family's enemies were behind the poisoning. Darjeeling ponders the Marquis's plan to hide this evidence until Carlyle is old enough to reclaim his noble rights. A dark memory reveals a golden shield as Darjeeling suspects the House of Vladimir acted to maintain their ducal power. While political alliances between noble children are common, Darjeeling remains skeptical of the true depth of such forced friendships. The princess worries that while they can get along now, growing older might bring new, dangerous squabbles between them. A moment of deep reflection follows as the princess questions if these childhood bonds can truly withstand the test of time. Lilith observes Darjeeling, noting with surprise that Her Highness seems capable of processing incredibly complex and mature political thoughts. Darjeeling asserts that despite her 3-year-old body, her mind is far more advanced than anyone in the palace realizes. Lilith stands by a map, confirming Darjeeling's suspicions that the Vladimir family may have been involved in the poisoning. Lilith explains that while there was certainly suspicion, no concrete evidence ever surfaced to link the Duke to the crime. The imperial family is restricted, unable to touch the powerful Duke without finding a just and undeniable cause first. Walking through the study, Lilith emphasizes the need for caution, since the Duke's family possesses such strong noble support. Lilith playfully assures Darjeeling that the Emperor won't force a political engagement with Lord Sasha against her personal wishes. A throb sounding follows as Darjeeling reacts with horror to the mere hypothetical suggestion of a forced marriage. A cute memory of her parents appears as the princess quickly demands they change the subject to something else. A soft zzz sounding follows as the round bird creature naps on the chair, while the lesson finally commences. Darjeeling looks out the window, feeling incredibly bored, and hoping the afternoon military lesson will finish up quickly. A sharp clack sounding follows as Lilith shuts the book, announcing that their lesson for the day has concluded. Another clack sounding follows as Darjeeling celebrates the early finish, wondering if yesterday's events influenced Lilith's decision. Lilith smiles mischievously, asking the pink-haired princess if she understands the real reason why they are finishing so early. A casual shrug follows as Darjeeling claims not to know, prompting Lilith to lean in with an affectionate look. Surrounding herself with flowers, Lilith gushes over how small and precious the princess is, much to Darjeeling's visible disgust. A soft stretch sounding follows as the bird wakes up, while the princess flees the room to escape Lilith. Darjeeling expresses her deep overwhelm, feeling as though she has spent far too much time dealing with that snake, Lilith. Lilith walks the princess out, noting they know each other well, while looking forward to their next military session. Lilith turns toward her waiting attendants, preparing to move on to her next set of imperial duties. A rhythmic step sounding follows as a maid informs Dame Lilith that the Emperor has requested her presence immediately. A quick nod sounding follows as Lilith considers the sudden summons, sensing the Emperor has something very serious to discuss. Lilith wonders if new intel has arrived from their network of spies, looking toward a sealed letter on the desk. Lilith reflects on their recent 3-year battle, believing their opponents are currently playing it safe and keeping quiet. A dark silhouette of a snake around a crown illustrates the need to monitor their temporarily retreating enemies very closely. Lilith enters the grand office, where the blonde-haired emperor admits that time passed slowly while waiting for her arrival. The emperor reports that a spy in the kingdom of Foreign has noticed suspicious activity, confirming Lilith's instincts about intel. Lilith looks at the scroll, calling the enemy foolish for breaking their surrender and risking another destructive war. Looking toward the fireplace, the emperor admits he never wants to be separated from Darjeeling by war ever again. The emperor asks Dame Lilith to handle this top-secret mission, trusting her as his most loyal and capable subject. Lilith firmly accepts the scroll, telling Her Majesty he can count on her to resolve the situation in Foreign. A warm smile follows as Lilith thanks the emperor for his trust, promising to repay him with a successful mission. A quick grab sounding follows as the emperor teases Lilith for her easy agreement, while she reaffirms her lifelong loyalty. Lilith vows to teach a serious lesson to anyone who dares to threaten the empire's newly restored and fragile peace. The emperor expresses his relief at having such a trustworthy knight, dismissing Lilith to begin her urgent secret task. Lilith walks away from the emperor's desk, her cape flowing as she prepares to depart the palace on imperial business. The blonde emperor looks up at a portrait, noting how strong the woman in the painting still appears to him. Feeling a wild heartbeat, the emperor wishes the late empress were still alive to share her wisdom and insight. A soft ha-ha sounding follows a memory as the emperor reflects on the fateful day the empress first took him in. A flashback reveals 2 young boys bullying a small, dirty child, demanding she trade a shiny thing for food. A sharp shake sounding follows as the child refuses, leading to a sudden thwack sounding as someone intervenes. A sharp turn sounding follows as the white-haired boy dismisses the brown-haired bully, who reacts with an indignant, angry shout. A quick dash sounding precedes a soft nom-nom sounding as the bullies flee, leaving the boy to enjoy his snack. The white-haired boy pauses mid-meal, his bright blue eyes focusing intently on a new figure standing before him. A soft gulp sounding follows as a dirty, blonde-haired girl stares longingly at the boy's steaming, savory meat skewer. Holding out the wooden skewer, the white-haired boy offers his food to the hungry girl, addressing her with simple directness. A savory waft sounding fills the air as the boy presents the warm, grilled meat, tempting the young girl's appetite. The blonde girl is visibly stunned by the gesture, her dirty face revealing the shock of receiving such unexpected generosity. A quick whip sounding follows as the girl crosses her arms and stubbornly rejects the offer, asserting her personal pride.